चल रहे हैं।
तुमने दिखाया सुंदर सपना।
We have a very long struggle ahead of us if we have to ensure that everyone has access to justice, to the rights that the Constitution grants to the people of the country, and if we have to make human rights a reality for the people of Pakistan.
जो ना बुझे ता मर के दम, जो ना बुझे ता मर के दम।
हमें ये प्रेशराइज कर रहे हैं कि आप जो है डेमोक्रेसी से विड्रा हो जाएं, कौमी हकूक़ से विड्रा हो जाएं, और आप जो है अपने नज़रियात से विड्रा हो जाएं, आप जो है जो गैर जमहूरी होते हैं वो जिस पे आप तनकीद करते हैं इस पे खामोशी इख्तियार कर लें, आइन की बात छोड़ दे, पार्लियामेंट की बालादस्ती की बात छोड़ दे, जो हम करते हैं उस सब पे जो आप आंखें बंद कर लें। नहीं कर सकता हूँ, बिल्कुल नहीं कर सकता, चाहे मेरी जान चली जाए, मेरी जान इतनी अजीज नहीं है, ये डेमोक्रेसी और पार्लियामेंट के बारे में अजीज है, मेरी कौम मुझे अजीज है।
गुर्बत और अफलास है हर सू, मेहनत का ना कोई सहारा।
इस खामोश मार्शल लॉ को सहते सहते तमाम पार्टियां बर्बाद हो जाएंगी। अगर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज ने, सिविल सोसाइटी ने उठने की कोशिश नहीं की, मुकाबले की कोशिश नहीं की, तो सिर्फ इस मुल्क में खादिम रिजवी रहेगा, बाकी कोई नहीं रहेगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
समझो हमने बुला दिया, मत समझो हमने बुला दिया।
Pakistan has numerous problems and several faults, but it is also unique in its preservation and perseverance to overcome intolerance, boldly face authoritarianism, and in denouncing terrorist acts carried out in the name of religion. Pakistanis have deeply suffered, and they deserve better.
हमेशा उलझती रही है सुकून सा खल्क, न उनकी रस्म नहीं है, न अपनी रीत नहीं।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I warmly welcome all our honorable guests, the distinguished delegates, conference. The theme of the conference this year is Challenges to Human Dignity. I, on behalf of the organizing committee, excuse all of my distinguished guests for running slightly late. We are actually expecting our guest of honor to reach in a couple of minutes. So meanwhile, may I request the honorable guests to please have your seats, please. बेटा ये जो आप हमारे वॉलंटियर्स हैं, मैं आपसे रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि मेहमानों को कहें कि वो अपनी सीट्स पे तशरीफ़ रखें. We'll be starting the proceedings in just 5 minutes. Thank you so much for coming from different parts. हमारे यहाँ आज की इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में शिरकत के लिए पाकिस्तान के मुख्तलिफ बार एसोसिएशन और इजलास से आसमा जहांगीर की एडमायरर, उनकी फ़ैन्स, फ़ीमेल एडवोकेट्स आई हैं. We have also joined by our volunteers from different universities, the law schools of Lahore. This conference is organized by Asma Jahangir Foundation with the partners AGHS, Supreme Court Bar Association, and Pakistan Bar Council. We are also greatly thankful to our sponsors. You can see their names over there for supporting us to hold this event annually. So I'll be joining you in just 5 minutes. Again, I'm sorry that we are running short of time. Our guest of honor would be joining us in 3-4 minutes. Thank you very much.
Check.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chief of the Ceremony, the Chief Justice Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmed. I would request the co-host of this conference, President Supreme Court Bar Association, Mr. Justice S.N. Bhoon, to please, Bhoon Sahab, please, if the Honourable Chief Justice join us on the stage. May I request the Honourable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmed, to please grace the presidential chair in the conference. Mr. S.N. Bhoon, the co-host of the conference, is accompanying the Honourable Chief Justice. I would request Mr. Justice Qazi Faiz Isa and Chief Justice Lahore High Court, Mr. Justice Qazi Faiz Isa, the Honourable Judge Supreme Court of Pakistan, to please join us on the stage. I would now request Chief Justice Islamabad High Court, Mr. Justice Atar Minallah, to please join us on the podium, sir. May I request former President, Supreme Court Bar Association, and an old friend of late Asma Jahangir, Mr. Yasin Azad, to please join us on the stage. I haven't seen Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd. Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd, former President, Supreme Court Bar Association. Sir, please join us on the head table, please, Kurd Saab. I would now like to invite the Honourable Ambassadors, who are also co-sponsors of this great international event. I would request Her Excellency Andrullah Kaminara, Ambassador of the European Union to Pakistan, to please join us. I would be requesting His Excellency Wouter Plomp, Ambassador of Netherlands to Pakistan. Please join us. He'll be joining in a while. May I request Dr. Philip Deichmann, Deputy Ambassador of Germany, to Pakistan. Sir, please join us on the stage. I'll be requesting His Excellency Christian Turner, the British High Commissioner to Pakistan, to please join us on the stage. And may I also request Mr. Noot Osterby, resident representative of UNDP in Pakistan. Sir, please. I would also request the chief organizer of this event, Nida Ali, to please join us on the head table. Nida and her team are actually responsible to arrange everything for this event. Kur Saab. Ali bhai, mere saath aa jaye. Oh, Yasin ke saath bitha. I would now request my co-moderators of today's event, Asma Jahangir and Mr. Abid Saki, to please come on the stage. I know. Sorry. My apologies. We have also joined by Her Excellency Ma'am Wendy Gilmore, the High Commissioner of Canada to Pakistan. I'm sorry, ma'am. Now, without wasting any minute, I would now request Hafiz Insarul Haq to recite holy verses from Quran Kareem. Hafiz Insarul Haq, advocate.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah ji. I would now request board member of AGHS, an upcoming lawyer, and beloved daughter of late Asma Jahangir, Asma Jahangir, to please come on the podium to introduce the theme of the conference and for welcome note. Asma Jahangir.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. Good morning, Honourable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honourable Judges, Excellencies, and friends. I want to thank you all for being here today, and especially those who have travelled here from far in these difficult times. Welcome. First and foremost, I wish to thank our sponsors, without whose generous support, this conference would not have been possible. In particular, the EU delegation to Pakistan, Her Excellency Andrula Kaminara and her team, thank you. I also wish to thank the Federal Republic of Germany, Kingdom of Netherlands, and the Canadian High Commission. It does honor to my mother's legacy and her work, for which she received several awards from European countries during her lifetime. I won't go out to list them. I also want to thank delegates from the United Nations for their presence, given my mother spent nearly 15 years working there in honorary positions for 2 mandates as a special rapporteur and then as a special representative to Iran at the time she left us. Now, I want to take a moment to remember absent friends. Mr. Kamran Arif, advocate, a steadfast comrade, and Kamla Basin, a friend, a tireless scholar, and activist for human rights from across the border. I want to take a special moment to remember Mr. Ayer Rahman, a human rights giant, my mother's friend, colleague, and mentor. Rahman Saab, who passed away this year, needs no introduction. While he was with us, we felt secure in the light of his intellect, shaped by his lifelong struggle to achieve his principles. He described the last Asma Jahangir conference as a people's assembly and stressed the importance of a fair and civilized discourse with its citizens. We are gathered here today for the 3rd Asma Jahangir conference to celebrate and reassert my mother's vision and her legacy. Invariably described as Pakistan's conscience, she was also a moral compass for the legal community here. My mother had faith in the role of the bar and the judiciary to hold each other accountable. It is heartening to see that the group that she founded continue to flourish and win hotly contested by-elections. We hope that her colleagues and other lawyers who joined this group will continue on the path so clearly defined by her and will not compromise on core principles of independence of judiciary and preserving the rule of law even in challenging times. She believed in the saying that a judgment that is made without due process is a judgment that is written in water. We have seen time and again that these judgments have come back to haunt us at critical junctures in our young democracy, not just political leaders and even military dictators, but also judges themselves. My mother was steadfast in her commitment to the rule of law and due process for all, without fear or favor. If she were here today at this People's Assembly, I am sure that she would have raised her voice out loud against the unaccountability of the state, deep state, and non-state actors in the face of myriad injustices. Today, at this People's Assembly, we must stake our commitment to the struggle for freedom of expression in Pakistan and also in neighboring countries. We must continue to demand that journalists, commentators, and activists critical of the state not be gagged, terrorized, beaten up, disappeared, and even killed. Asma would have raised her voice against political victimization. The latest World Justice Report on the rule of law ranks Pakistan at 130 out of 139 countries in the world. The indicators based upon original and wide-ranging data includes an assessment of an effective and impartial justice system, open government, just laws, and checks on executive power. Every indicator today is alarming, from freedom of expression, rule of law, to economic and social well-being. It is regrettable that when politicians and parliamentarians in government talk about development, they ignore the bedrock of development, the rule of law. When they speak of peace in regimes where there is dissent, justify authoritarian measures to impose peace, it is too often the peace of the graveyard. It is the end of the rule of law and the onset of tyranny. Sadly, this kind of tyranny is rife in our region and known to our citizens for far too long. Today, we must pledge to raise our voices and fight against all challenges to human dignity. Dignity is a beautiful concept that knows no boundaries of race, caste, creed, or nationality. Human dignity is compromised all too often in our region. When a family sells a girl child to feed itself in Afghanistan, the disgrace to human dignity is not just felt in Afghanistan, it is felt by us all. We in Pakistan and neighboring countries must understand that the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan will not and cannot be contained within its borders. The brutal repression of the rights of women and girls, religious and ethnic minorities will have a direct effect on the plight of women and girls across the region. States can close borders, but they cannot close hearts and minds. For this conference, the state did not grant visas to many of our international speakers. Yet, they cannot stop voices from traveling across borders. I often think it is ironic that individuals and groups that resort to vigilante and brute violence and take the law in their own hands are allowed to travel, to congregate, and to share ideas. But people committed to peace, humanitarian justice, and fundamental rights are not allowed to meet. It is only the rule of law and the guarantee of fundamental rights that can bring peace and prosperity to this region. It is here that we, the legal communities and human rights activists in South Asia, must play our role to use our voices and the law as an instrument of positive change for those who are left behind, tortured and silenced. There must be redress for those who are discriminated against. There must be an unequivocal demand for democracy. The state, deep state, and non-state actors must be held accountable. The judiciary must step up to its role in strengthening institutions and values that support a culture of the rule of law. Fundamental rights that lie at the heart of the Constitution must be protected. Without protection of rights and equality of rights, due process and opportunities, there is no rule of law, just rule by law. It is for this reason that we are gathered here today, to openly and without censorship debate and discuss critical issues that impact on the rule of law in Pakistan and our wider region. Without open government, accountability, impartiality, and equality of laws and procedure, we cannot be free. We are all servants of the law in order that we may be free. Thank you very much. I now respectfully invite former executive members of the Pakistan Bar Council, Mr. Abid Saki and Senator Azam Nazir Tarar, to moderate this event.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sulema. Before we proceed further, I would warmly welcome Mr. Justice Mian Saqib Nisar, the former Chief Justice of Pakistan, an old friend of late Asma Jahangir. साकिब साहब ने हमेशा उन्हें बड़ी बहन की तरह ट्रीट किया है. वी आर विटनेस टू भूम साहब. हम लोग उनका एक बड़ा मजबूत रिश्ता था मरहुमा आसमा जहांगीर साहिबा के लिए. On behalf of our management, I would also welcome Mr. Justice Ijazul Ahsan, the Honourable Judge of Supreme Court of Pakistan. We have also joined by Mr. Justice Muzahir Ali Akbar Naqvi, the Judge of Supreme Court of Pakistan, Mr. Justice Ali Bakar Najfi Sahab from Lahore High Court. I also welcome former President Supreme Court Bar Association, Sayyid Kalbe Hassan Sahab. He has travelled all the way from Islamabad, and Sayyid Amjad Shah, the former Vice Chairman, Pakistan Bar Council, will come from KP to attend this conference. I also extend our thanks to Dr. Malik Baloch, former Chief Minister, Balochistan, Mr. Frastyab Khatik, an old friend of late Asma Jahangir. Mohsen Dawad is also amongst us. Mohsen एक मजबूत आवाज़ हैं पार्लियामान में ओप्रेस्ड लोगों की और हमेशा बड़ी जानदार गुफ्तगू करते हैं. मंजूर पश्तीन साहब भी इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के लिए तशरीफ़ लाए हैं. फ्राम बलोचिस्तान ज़हूर शहवानी साहब, फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट बलोचिस्तान हाई कोर्ट बार, आसमा बीबी के पुराने साथियों में से हैं. ह्यूमन राइट्स के लिए उन्होंने बड़ा काम किया. सिंध हाई कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन के प्रेसिडेंट थे खालिद जावेद साहब, वो हमारे दरमियान मौजूद हैं. हमारे फॉर्मर गवर्नर और आसमा जहांगीर के एक और मुरब्बी और मोहसन जनाब शाहिद हामिद साहब हमारे दरमियान मौजूद हैं. मेहमानों के इंट्रोडक्शन का सिलसिला जारी रहेगा. नाउ वी प्रोसीड विद द एजेंडा ऑफ द कॉन्फ्रेंस. मे आई रिक्वेस्ट द pk.net जो कि हमारे मीडिया पार्टनर्स हैं टू प्लीज़ प्ले उनका जो वॉइस मैसेज है. डॉक्टर एंगस कालामर्द, द सेक्रेटरी जनरल एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल. I am actually very disappointed to share with the audience that we have...
It is a deep honor to join you via video for this Asma Jahangir conference, which celebrates the work and legacy of a dear colleague and a friend, a brilliant human rights defender, activist, lawyer, who left us far too early. Martin Luther King said in 1967, upon receiving an honorary doctorate in civil law, "It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me." And I think that's pretty important. And so, while the law may not change the heart of man, it does change the habits of men if it is vigorously enforced. And through changes in habits, pretty soon changes will take place and even the heart may be changed. To play the role that Martin Luther King assigned to the law, I think we need two things. Something I'll call good laws, and then good people to enforce it, good institution. Not every law is good. Breaking bad law may be a good thing. Martin Luther King in Birmingham broke the law. The Underground Railroad, who brought slaves to freedom, broke the laws. Right now, people who protect refugees and migrants in Europe are breaking the laws. So good laws are the laws that govern us all, that governs our global society. They are the principle and standard at the heart of Universal Declaration and Convention. Good laws are the laws that protect human rights and enforce the obligations of government. Good laws means no one is above the law, no matter their richness and status. Good laws means that everyone is treated equally, no matter their religion, ethnicity, or social class. Good laws demand that they be adjudicated by an open and impartial judiciary, supported by fair and prompt trials. Good laws demand good people, good institutions to enforce them. Good institutions like the court in Pakistan, which banned the use of death penalty for prisoners with mental disability. Good institutions like the court, which characterize the climate crisis as a human rights violation. Good institutions like the judges, who safeguarded the right to protest of the annual Women's March. But to play this role, judges too and their independence must be protected. If a judge fears for their life while adjudicating a case, if a judge is unable to summon the powerful or the security forces because of fears or threat, If judges are susceptible to corruption, bribery, or political pressure, then the judiciary cannot play its role. Human rights are not protected, and the laws are not vigorously enforced. So for the judiciary to play its role, the court must be accessible to all, particularly marginalized and disadvantaged groups. That means it must be well-resourced too. There should be adequate funding. Capacity must be strengthened. And court and judges should be able to rely on proper infrastructures. That is key to an independent judiciary. Sadly, in Pakistan, courts are too often under-resourced. Judges are overworked, leading to a massive 2.1 million cases pending across Pakistan judiciary. When government, security services, the military, the police, the prison system fail to protect human rights, an independent judiciary is often the last bastion to protect us all. To understand the importance of an independent judiciary, let's recall what has happened without an independent judiciary. Let's recall what happened without judges willing and able to enforce the rule of law against those prepared to take the law in their own hands. Investing and protecting in a strong, independent judiciary remains one of the best means and tools to design, to protect, to enforce human rights and the rule of law, and to protect us all against repression, against arbitrariness, against violence, conflict, and war. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As I was mentioning earlier, it's very disappointing for the conference management that we could not get clearance and visas for 6 of our delegates who were supposed to be here and interact with all of you. Now they would be joining us on through the social media platforms, the Skype or the Zoom. The 3 are the Indian speakers and 3 from the different European countries. We proceed further, and I would be now requesting Her Excellency Andrullah Kaminara, the EU Ambassador for Pakistan, to please join me on the podium.
Assalamu alaikum. Honorable Chief Justice, honorable judges and respected bar members, honorable guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute honor to be addressing the 3rd Asma Jahangir Conference, and I would like from the start to congratulate the organizers, the Asma Jahangir AGHS Legal Aid Cell and the Asma Jahangir Foundation. I have not had the fortune to meet Asma Jahangir personally, whose life and achievements I very much admire, but I consider myself lucky to know her physical and extended adopted family, who are fueled by her passion for human rights and justice, and to see that her legacy is still very much alive and flourishing. I feel that also personally, I have been inspired by her life just by reading about what she was able to achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, in these types of settings, we tend to speak from our own perspective and provide our own prioritization to issues of human rights. I will try and spend most of the time I have to speak from another perspective. And I will split my intervention into 2 parts. The first, I will be presenting what human rights, I believe, priorities will be the ones that women from Tharbakar and Umarkot would like to see us listen to, and because I was there earlier on in the week, and then I would very briefly touch on some of the things that I personally believe in. Let me tell you that having toured in Tharbakar and Umarkot and seen the conditions of life, the hard conditions of life, if I was speaking from their perspective, I think they would say they would prioritize with respect to human rights, their wish list in the following order. Having human rights starts by being registered, that you exist, having an ID card, a CNIC card. No clear data exists, but about 8 to 12 million people in Pakistan, predominantly women, don't have even that basic right. No registration means no access to services, no rights such as inheritance, no human status, no vote, no voice. So I think for those marginalized of the marginalized, the first step would be to be recognized that they exist. The second point on the wish list is education. And I know all of us here are privileged enough to have been educated, but for those people and those realities, that is an absolute necessity. Not even half of Pakistani women can read or write, and 50% is the average. If you go into the details of this statistics, rural areas in Balochistan, rural areas in Sindh, you will find that only 5 or 10% of the women can read and write. Being literate means that you can better know and demand your rights. But being literate also means at the very basic level, that when your child is ill and you're given some medication, you can at least know how to give that medication to your children. So for me, the second point on their wish list is the issue of access to education, because that is a prerequisite to demanding your human rights. The third point I would like to say from their perspective deals with climate adaptation. Areas such as Tharbakar and Umarkot are very vulnerable to climate change disasters. In fact, I was there because I was visiting EU finance projects, which on the one hand focus on the disaster risk reduction, and on the other hand on providing food security. Consider the following dilemma from their perspective. The main source of livelihoods in those areas is coal mining and livestock, particularly cattle. At the recent COP26 conference, phasing out coal and reducing methane gases from cattle raising was identified as the top causes of climate change. So people from those areas survive from mining and cattle raising, which causes climate change, which is their biggest vulnerability. Providing and planning now to give those people with alternative livelihoods and climate-resistant crops, not only out of charity, and I underline that, but also out of enlightened self-interest, means that we'll be providing them with the basic human rights and the basic human rights of a future. The other thing I have spent most of this week on is talking to businessmen and business organizations in Karachi, encourage them to acknowledge the challenges that exist with giving human rights to their workers and pleading with them to actually address those problems. Now, let me now turn to just two very quick points from which are important for human rights from my perspective. The first one concerns the freedom of the press. Only when you have freedom of the press can citizens hold governments accountable, can have the information that they need in order to make informed choices about who to vote. So for us, for the European Union, freedom of the press is of utmost importance. The second point I would like to make is the issue of the rule of law. The EU in Pakistan for several years has been supporting the increasing capacity of the judiciary in order for them to provide effective, speedy justice. We are very pleased that we're working with the relevant ministries and also with the Chief Justice, and we're currently implementing a 20 million program, which is basically looking into strengthening the legal and regulatory framework, enhancing justice to all, alternative dispute resolution, and increased participation of women in the police force. Allow me to make one final comment on the role of women in the legal profession. Although I believe that there are excellent women judges in Pakistan, Pakistan still is the only nation in South Asia to have never had a female Supreme Court judge. I am convinced that if the justice system walked the talk, there would have been at least a few Supreme Court judges which are female. I would encourage to go down that path. I would like finally to congratulate and thank the organizers for this fantastic organization, which we are very proud as the EU to support, and bahut shukriya.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kaminara, EU Ambassador to Pakistan. May I now request Her Excellency Wendy Gilmore, High Commissioner of Canada to Pakistan and a great friend of Pakistan, please come and share her views with the audience regarding the event, and late Asma Jahangir.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much to the organizers of this conference for the invitation to be here today. To my esteemed members of the panel, the Chief Justice of Pakistan, the Justice of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the High Court of the Chief Justice of the Lahore High Court, and my others. It is truly a privilege to be here, to see so many people in this room today, to have so many people here in Pakistan committed to spending their time and their energy devoted to the subject of human rights, of respect, of diversity, inclusion, and pluralism. This is truly encouraging for all of us to have this opportunity today. Asma Jahangir was a luminary in this field, a friend of Canada, of Pakistan, of all of us, and really a guiding light in the preeminence that human rights should play in our society and in how governance happens. I'd say just a few words today, perhaps, as part of this panel. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from my other panelists that are with us this morning. But I think first and foremost, this is supposed to be initially an opportunity to talk about the role of the judiciary in human rights. And the judiciary plays an incredibly important role in the triumvirate of institutions that govern a nation, the executive, the legislative branch, and the judiciary, especially in a parliamentary democracy like is Pakistan, or a parliamentary democracy like we have in Canada. The role played by these institutions are critical, and each branch has a different and complementary role to play. The legislative branch, of course, makes laws. We've seen that in Pakistan's parliament this week. The executive branch oversees the implementation of these laws, and the judicial branch is to interpret the laws and to resolve disputes arising from them. Canada's former Chief Justice, Beverly Mclaughlin, who was the first woman Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, she was the Chief Justice for 17 years and held that position. I was hoping at some point we would have her here at the conference. Unfortunately, that didn't prove to be the case, but she's very much here with us in spirit. She's written that the role of the judiciary, and one of its most essential roles, is ruling on legislation and on the executive branch and ensuring that those laws are constitutional and that they are consistent with the principles governing a country. That they have to maintain the task of guaranteeing that the Constitution and the laws adapted by legislatures are appropriate, are consistent, but but that play due deference to the legislature's role in preeminent lawmaking and the ability at arriving solutions through debate and research, and ensuring that those laws represent the will of the peoples in the country. These are incredibly important roles, and it shows the preeminent task that's played in particular in that complementary role by legislatures and the judiciary. This is something that I think we can all spend some time thinking about, and ensuring that as laws are passed that embody the principle of the international obligations for human rights, of the respect for peoples, that they are then implemented effectively. This is one of the challenges that we see in Pakistan and elsewhere around the world, that laws are implemented unevenly and that don't always apply to the people that are those that need them the most. My colleague Andrula has just mentioned the very vulnerable populations of women and girls that exist here in Pakistan. This is one of the challenges that Pakistan is faced with, and one of Canada's chief priorities here is supporting the empowerment of women and girls, making sure that women and girls are able to achieve their full rights, their full opportunity within the society, which cannot happen unless they are afforded equal access under the law, access to education, to opportunities, to health, and to justice. We strive very hard to work with our partners here in Pakistan to make this happen. Canada has a feminist foreign policy, a feminist international assistance policy, which places the rights of women and girls at the heart of everything that we do. And so I am so encouraged to see so many women here in the audience today, so many, not quite a balanced participation on the panel, but lots of women who will be speaking over the course of the next 2 days. This is important. Women have to be able to take their voice, take their place, to have a voice in these fora. Diversity, inclusion, and pluralism are at the heart of Canadian values, the heart of what we try and do, and the heart of what this conference is representing. So again, I'm so pleased to be able to be here today. I'm looking forward to listening to all of you, to the panelists, and really encourage you to take this opportunity and have your voice heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ji. And we move on further. I would now request Mr. Knut Osterby, Country Director, UNDP. Ladies and gentlemen, Knut has served Pakistan like a real friend. In 4 different stints, I believe. Knut is here for almost 9 years, serving Pakistan and people of Pakistan. So please give him a big welcome, Mr. Knut Osterby, Country Director, United Nations Development Program.
Distinguished panelists, friends, participants, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's the second time I'm in this conference, but this is the 3rd Asma Jahangir conference that UNDP has the honor of being part of. It gives us immense pleasure to witness how the Asma Jahangir Foundation has evolved this into a truly memorable event, not to be missed by anyone interested in human rights. All along, our cooperation with the Asma Jahangir Foundation, based on our shared vision for protection, promotion, and strengthening human rights and equality, has deepened and further nurtured our collective commitments to human rights. Today, we gather here not just for a series of expert sessions and dialogues on most compelling human rights themes, but also to rejuvenate the spirit that Asma Jahangir imbued the human rights discourse in Pakistan and beyond its borders. At the United Nations, we remember Asma Jahangir as a human rights giant. For more than 40 years, she defended human rights with courage, eloquence, and integrity. She stood up for everyone, everywhere, for women victimized in the name of honor, for abused children and religious minorities, for bonded laborers and the disenfranchised, and even for her critics. We remember Asma Jahangir as one of the world's loudest voices for the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. Her sister, Hina Jilani, rightly said that her passing was a loss for everyone, but especially for those who are voiceless and whose voices she raised. In 1996, my wife Anne was fortunate to be able to interview Asma Jahangir for the Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten. They spoke of her work and the pressures she faced. Asma spoke with genuine pain when they discussed the plight of abused women or prisoners of the downtrodden. And Anne asked, wasn't it hard to dedicate your whole life to fighting for the poorest and most helpless? Yes, but she was unfazed, although for her children's sake, she wished she didn't always get home so late. One day she said, they will hopefully understand why it was necessary. I know they understand. We all understand. That's why we are here. Defending human rights is difficult work, but defending human rights has never been more necessary. The theme of this year's Asma Jahangir Conference, Challenges to Human Dignity, reminds me of Asma Jahangir's words, I would simply not compromise on the fundamental rights of people. These words are a constant reminder that a society is stronger and more resilient when each individual has the agency to play a meaningful role in political, economic, and social life. This includes being able to access information, engaging in dialogue, expressing difference of opinion, and peacefully joining together to express their views. This also includes defending the rights to freedom of speech, thought, conscience, religion, and belief, as well as promoting accountability for human rights violations and abuses, and highlighting threats to human rights conditions within the society whenever and wherever they might occur. Like every UN entity, UNDP is resolute in playing its full part in advancement of human rights and to ensure that no one is left behind. Equally, we are convinced that promotion of human rights is not the narrow province of any organ or office. It is a shared responsibility that concerns and impacts us all, everywhere, and at all times. In Pakistan, we work closely with the Ministry of Human Rights as well as the provincial human rights and social welfare departments. We supported the government with the Transgender Persons Act, establishing the first Transgender Protection Center in the country, as well as developing the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. In making this work possible, I thank our key partners, the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the governments of US and Switzerland over the past years. We are also supporting the Ministry of Human Rights in establishing a comprehensive mechanism on human rights data collection, analysis and reporting. At the provincial level, the departments are receiving technical capacity support for improved policy development and implementation. Apart from that, we work extensively through our Rule of Law program with the support of the European Union, the US, and the government of Japan in establishing model police stations and the gender desks to facilitate the people, and especially the women of Pakistan, to access justice. I'm especially proud of the virtual courts being established through this program to ensure no one is left behind. Thanks to the support of USAID, we are helping young women lawyers with their education and training so that there could be more aspiring young Asma Jahangirs. Finally, it's befitting that this year's Asma Jahangir Conference coincides with the lead up to the 16 days of activism and up towards the International Human Rights Day. UNDP stands ready to work and assist Pakistan on the implementation of its national and international human rights obligations and commitments in its devoted collaboration with the state, government bodies, and civil society. Meanwhile, it's essential that the voice of civil society is incorporated into this work. We seek to ensure greater transparency, predictability, and inclusivity for NGOs and civil society in our work. And we welcome your efforts to ensure strong civil society representation and leadership in Pakistan's development and human rights journey. With this, I congratulate the Asma Jahangir Foundation at the onset of this important event. It truly makes a difference. You are making a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Watsabi. I would now request His Excellency Christian Turner, the British High Commissioner to Pakistan. Sir, please join us on the.
Khawateen o Hazrat, Salam Alaikum. It gives me great pleasure to be back in Lahore, the birthplace of Pakistani heroes and heroines, including, of course, Asma Jahangir, whose legacy we commemorate along with her remarkable and important life through this conference. And I'd like to thank Asma's family, the conference organizers, and this very distinguished panel for bringing us together today to discuss these very important issues. And ladies and gentlemen, as I thought what I wanted to say to you today, I decided that the heart of the issue is something that is not very diplomatic. It's uncomfortable conversations. Uncomfortable conversations. And in talking about uncomfortable conversations, I am going to raise probably one of the most taboo issues for a British High Commissioner, and that is cricket. Cricket. Not a subject we've heard so far on our panel, but an important one for many of us. Now, I raise this first of all because some of you know that I am an ambassador for cricket. I'm a great advocate of seeing English cricket returning to Pakistan. And recently, I had to speak out and have an uncomfortable conversation myself about a wrong decision of the England cricket team in touring. And I learned that when I speak out about issues relating to Afghanistan, to girls' education, to climate change, it doesn't attract nearly as much attention as when I speak out on cricket. But the real point is that something else has been happening recently on cricket that I think really brings out why uncomfortable conversations are so important. And there is a man called Azim Rafiq, who is a cricketer of Pakistani heritage who has played for Yorkshire and has recently caused a very, very important conversation in the UK about racism in British sport and in cricket. And Azim had the courage to speak out about systemic racism that has affected him in his career, and I think is a very good example of how, if we are to build back better from the very difficult past 2 years of the pandemic, if we are to ensure dignity and freedom of voice for all, it needs us to be able to have uncomfortable conversations, conversations that we must not and should not shy away from. Now, of course, the Constitution of Pakistan provides fundamental rights, which include freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of information, freedom of religion, freedom of association, and the freedom of the press. And we need to reaffirm our unwavering commitments to the core values and principles set out in the Constitution of Pakistan. And as of my esteemed colleagues have already said, that is in key part a role of the Chief Justice and the Judiciary here with us on the panel. As Pakistan reaches 75 years anniversary of the country, it's having the right conversations, those uncomfortable conversations like the ones today, that are crucial to building back better. Now, for the UK, promoting democracy and defending democratic freedoms are fundamental to our foreign development and international policy. We believe that strong democratic institutions and accountable governments which uphold universal rights and the rule of law are key building blocks for secure and prosperous states. And there are three specific issues I'd like to quickly run through, which are going to be part of this conference, part of the discussions in the next 2 days. The first is gender and the dignity of equality of gender. The UK is unwavering in its commitments to gender equality and women and girls' rights, particularly given that COVID-19, the pandemic, has exacerbated existing inequalities and disproportionately impacted the lives of women and girls across the world. No country will prosper if the potential of half its population is not harnessed. The World Economic Forum's 2021 Global Gender Index ranked Pakistan 153 out of 156 countries on this issue. So improved representation of women in Parliament, in courts, as the Canadian High Commissioner has just said, in schools, these are key to setting strong benchmarks on the participation of women in the decision-making structures. And let me mention, as I'm prepared to have uncomfortable conversations, ladies and gentlemen, that on this panel, beyond the organizers and my two wonderful colleagues, Andrula and Wendy, I think there are too many men in suits talking to you. So we must call out the manels. Thank you, Andrula. Ladies, you're allowed to applause at this point. I say this as a husband, as a son, as a father to women, and I think more women representation is very important in these events. The second area is freedom of religion and freedom of belief. A visit for those of us who are not, well, for everyone in this town, to the Lahore Museum shows any visitor that Pakistan's rich history of faiths, its Sikh heritage, the center of Buddhism and Gandhara art, the birth of Sufism, shaped what Pakistan is today. In this context, we must condemn continued attacks on minorities, their places of worship, which is unacceptable, and the judiciary's actions to counter violations of minority rights is commendable, particularly the 2014 Supreme Court judgment, which constituted a commission for minorities, and the empowerment of that National Commission for Minorities and ensuring it is enshrined in law is now a key task. I'd like to appreciate the work of Dr. Shoaib Suddle through the one-man Commission on Minority Rights, including improving the response to attacks against minorities and their places of worship. And I'd also like to mention forced conversions and steps taken towards more progressive laws and robust protection measures to hold those responsible accountable. I hope that legislation criminalizing forced conversion is finalized to ensure children and young people are protected. Third and finally, ladies and gentlemen, is media freedom. And free voice is essential. People must be able to discuss and debate issues freely, to challenge their governments and to make informed choices supported by access to information provided by a strong, robust and independent media. Dissent is a sign of weakness. Dissent is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. A sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. The UK has long supported media freedoms, both at home and abroad, and our Global Media Freedom Coalition, run with the Canadian government, was launched in 2018 and demonstrates, I hope, a new wave of action on this. As you've heard, Pakistan ranks 145 out of 180 countries in the 2021 World Press Freedom Index, and that is why the approval this week of the Journalist Protection Bill is so welcome, and we look forward to its passage into law, its full enforcement in the spirit of that law. Equally, societies across the world are struggling to define regulation of media in the digital age, and we shouldn't shy away from debate about how the media can be properly regulated whilst protecting and upholding the freedom of expression. So in this, the UK is exat with the people of Pakistan, and it's not about words and speeches, it's about action. In the interest of time, I won't give you a full list, but the UK in Pakistan, my High Commission, is doing a range of things. We're supporting minority children to attend school. We're supporting the establishment of community forums. We're investing in improved protection of women and girls in gender-based violence. We have helped set up child courts. We're training minority journalists. And I'm pleased to say that our flagship Chevening scholarships 7 years ago had only 6% of Chevening scholars as women, and that is now 60%. From 6% to 60% women as Chevening scholars, and we now award, we now award the top Pakistani female candidate the Asma Jahangir Award each year, and last year in a tie, 2 Chevenings got the Asma Jahangir Award. So in conclusion, to bring me back to uncomfortable conversations, this is not something you generally associate with diplomats. There is a famous definition of a diplomat that is someone who tells you to go to hell in such a way that you want to ask for directions. Now, I hope I don't always conform to this, but my point is that on these issues, we have to be prepared to speak truth to power and to have those conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, the partnership, as you know, I care about it deeply between the UK and Pakistan. This is a country that I love living and being in, and our partnership is historic and deep. We're walking this journey in belief, in understanding, with a view of dignity and voice for all Pakistanis. What unites us is far greater than what divides us. We have a long history, but we should look to the future. Being eksat in our Aaj, in our Kal, will create a better and more equal world for all with dignity. Pakistan ki kamyabi insani hakuk bahut ahem hai. Thank you very much. Bahut shukriya.
Thank you so much, Mr. Turner, for sharing your heart. Let me share with you as well that in the present event, the third Asma Jahangir conference, we have been joined by more than 100 female lawyers, human rights activists, the female judges from across the Pakistan, and the majority actually comes from Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Our honorable guest would be delighted to know that even at the Lahore High Court, which is also in a way co-host of this conference alongside the Supreme Court Bar Association, it's the parent High Court of late Asma Jahangir as well. We have more than 2,000 registered practicing female lawyers. And we hope to improve this number in future years, inshallah. We move on further. And I would now request Mr. Wouterplomb, Honourable Ambassador of Netherlands, to please join us on the podium and share his views.
Assalamu alaikum, aapka kya haal hai? Honourable Chief Justice, judges, excellencies, and friends, it feels great to be back in Lahore. As they say, you are not born until you've been to Lahore. So I'm extremely glad and grateful that I was born 2 years ago. And I enjoy coming back to Lahore every time since. To this center of culture for centuries, the heart of Pakistan, this historical and magnificent city renowned for its warm hospitality, as we are enjoying today again. I'm also humbled to pay tribute to the late Mrs. Asma Jahangir, because she is one of the bravest human rights icons, not only of Pakistan, but of the world. No doubt, she was an iron lady who stood for the rights and protection of the marginalized and oppressed in Pakistan and worldwide. Women in Pakistan and beyond are reaping the benefits of Asma's struggle and achievements for equal rights of all citizens in Pakistan and throughout the world. My country and Asma Jahangir go back at least to 2010, when Asma was in the Netherlands to receive the Freedom of Worship Medal from the Roosevelt Foundation. In her acceptance speech, she reminded us that democracy, rule of law, and human rights are closely interlinked. They either flourish together or they perish one by one. Unfortunately, nowadays this interlinkage seems to be not flourishing. It's disturbing to witness democratic backsliding, challenges to the rule of law, and a shrinking space for human rights defenders and for media around the globe. We must work effectively together to stop this downward spiral. The Netherlands has a long-standing, multifaceted, deepening and broadening relationship with Pakistan. Only 2 months ago, our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Sigrid Kaag, visited Islamabad. And we are supporting the efforts, the extremely important efforts of the HJHS Legal Aid Cell to improve access to justice for women and for religious minorities. For the Netherlands, gender equality and supporting human rights defenders are crucial to strengthen democracy and the rule of law. We believe that shrinking civil society space is an alarming trend worldwide. Without a vibrant civil society, democracy and socio-economic progress cannot be realized. And this meeting today of you coming here in great numbers shows how important it is for civil society to come together and to contribute to the public debate. We believe that everyone should have equal rights, irrespective of who they are. And that's why the Netherlands advocates for equal rights for women and for girls. Of course, respecting local cultures and social norms, surely. But throughout the world, some norms are truly universal. For instance, it's enormously important that children are treated equally from a young age, that they learn about human rights in order to claim them later in their life. Every young girl, just like every young boy, should have equal access to education, to healthcare, and enjoy equal economic opportunities for a better life. To conclude, It feels wonderful to be back here at this conference in the memory of Asma Jahangir. Together, we can each in our own unique way continue Asma's unrelenting pursuit of human rights for all. Bahut shukriya.
Thank you so much. In the meanwhile, we have also joined by Mr. Justice Shahram Sarwar and an old friend of Asma Jahangir, a bar leader from Balochistan, Sardar Tahir Hussain. As I was mentioning, the achievements of the female lawyers in the legal field, I would also like to introduce another Asma's follower, Asma Hamid, who also served as Advocate General of the Punjab, the principal law officer. She is also with us. Moving further, actually the hall is jam-packed and the management could not find out our distinguished guest, Dr. Philip Deichmann, the Deputy Ambassador for Germany. I'm just wondering if His Excellency is there in the hall. So we move on further. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, and as rightly said by the previous speaker, that Asma Jahangir was known as an Iron Lady. And while paying her tribute, Wali Zafar Saab also joined us, the former President, Supreme Court Bar Association, an old friend of Asma. Thank you so much for coming. I would be switching to Urdu poetry for Asma Jahangir. कि बेखौफ जिंदा लहजे में करती थी गुफ्तगू, खुद साख्ता खुदाओं से डरती नहीं थी तुम, और एक नुक्ताए शऊर थी कुर्ता से जीस्त पर, फैले अगर कभी तो सिमटती नहीं थी तुम। तो आयरन लेडी को फॉलो करने वाला एक आयरन मैन भी है हमारे दरमियान, एक मजबूत आवाज़, साबिक सदर सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन, ख़वातीन हज़रात अली अहमद कुर्द।
Honourable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice Gulzar Saab, Honourable Justice Qazi Faizi Saab, Honourable Justice Mr. Amir Bhatti Saab, Honourable Justice Mr. Athar Manila Saab, Baki Honourable Judges, Presidium members, ladies and gentlemen. एक बहुत बड़ी खूबसूरत आवाज़ जिसको अभी सिर्फ चंद मिनट पहले आयरन लेडी के हवाले से उनका तारुफ कराया गया और रेफरेंस हुआ। सारी ज़िंदगी उसकी आवाज़ गरीबों की आवाज़ थी, इस मुल्क के मजलूम लोगों की आवाज़ थी। क्या औरत क्या मर्द, हर शख्स के लिए उसने आवाज़ उठाई और बड़े दर्द से आवाज़ उठाई। जब वो आवाज़, उसमें एक गूंज थी, एक चीख थी, वो ये नहीं देखती थी कि ये आवाज़, ये चीख किन के कानों में जाकर जो है हलचल मचाएगी। कभी उसने नहीं सोचा, कभी उसने नहीं सोचा। मगर आज उस आयरन लेडी के हवाले से मैं बहुत अफसोस और उससे कहता हूँ कि आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन के मैनेजमेंट्स ने आज जो इस इनॉगरल सेशन के लिए जो टॉपिक चूज़ किया है, उस हवाले से मैं समझता हूँ कि कतन सही नहीं है। रोल ऑफ द जुडिशरी इन प्रोटेक्टिंग द ह्यूमन राइट्स एंड स्ट्रेंथनिंग द डेमोक्रेसी। क्या बात करते हैं आप, क्या बात करते हैं। कौन सी जुडिशरी मौजूद है? कौन सी जुडिशरी मौजूद है? वो जो हमारे सामने है, वो जो जिसमें हम पेश होते हैं, वो अदालतें, वो जुडिशरी जिसमें इस मुल्क के लाखों लोग लाखों लोग सुबह 8 बजे से 2:30 बजे तक इंसाफ के लिए, अपनी दादरसी के लिए मौजूद होते हैं। जब वो 2:30 बजे वापस अपने घरों को जाते हैं तो अपने सीने पे, अपनी रूहों के ऊपर एक जख्म लेकर जाते हैं। आप उस जुडिशरी की बात करते हैं, वो लोगों को, ह्यूमन राइट्स को प्रोटेक्ट करेगा, वो हमारी जमहूरियत को स्ट्रेंथन करेगा। बहुत बहुत हल्का, बहुत छोटा टॉपिक आपने जो है इस स्पीकर्स को दिया है। ये जुडिशरी, जिसको मैं नहीं कहता, इंटरनेशनल जो एक्सपर्ट्स के हवाले से नीचे की जो नंबर हैं उसमें 130 में 126 नंबर पे है। मुझे वॉइस ऑफ अमेरिका वाले ने, पाकिस्तानी था, उन्होंने कहा कि आपसे कुछ बातें करनी है और आपका इंटरव्यू लेना है। मैंने कहा किस बात पे? कहते हैं अभी जो रिपोर्ट आई है कि पाकिस्तान की जुडिशरी दुनिया की जुडिशरी में 126 नंबर पे है। मैंने कहा इस पे आप बहैसियत पाकिस्तानी खुश नहीं कि नीचे से हम 4 नंबर ऊपर हैं। ये मजाक बंद होना चाहिए। और जो भी हमारी एक जुडिशरी मौजूद है, मैं अफसोस से कहता हूं, मैं कोई शौकिया नहीं कहता, कोई अब किसी भी मकसद में, खुदा की कसम, मैं कसम खा के कहता हूं, कोई मेरा मकसद नहीं है इस तरह की बातें करने के लिए। मैं एक जिम्मेवार आदमी हूं इस मुल्क के लिए, इस मुल्क की जुडिशरी के लिए, इस मुल्क की जुडिशरी के लिए जितने लोगों ने काम किया, जितने लोगों ने कुर्बानियां दी, सबसे आगे अली अहमद कुर था। मुझे राइट पहुंचता है बात करने का। ये मेरा हक है, ये मेरा हक है कि मैं बात करूं। आज जो भी हमारी जुडिशरी है, हम रिस्पेक्ट करते हैं। मैं कभी भी कोर्ट रूम में जो है मैं वो करते हुए गया हूं और बहुत रिस्पेक्ट पे करते हुआ मैं गया हूं। वो कोर्ट है, मैं रिस्पेक्ट देते हैं, कोशिश करते हैं, लड़ते हैं, झगड़ते हैं लोगों के लिए, जो भी थोड़ी बहुत छोटी मोटी जो भी रिलीफ हम लेने की कोशिश करते हैं। मगर उस जुडिशरी में भी वाज़ेह तौर पे नजर आने वाली बात है कि डिवीजन है। 126 नंबर पे भी जो जुडिशरी है उसमें भी डिवीजन है। अब हम क्या लोगों को मैसेज दे रहे हैं? मुझे अफसोस होता, मैं एक जिम्मेवार आदमी हूं और मुझे अफसोस होता क्यों हम इस हालत में पहुंचे। ये 22 करोड़ आवाम का मुल्क है, 22 करोड़ आवाम का मुल्क है, 22 करोड़ आवाम का मुल्क है। और एक जर्नल, एक जर्नल, एक जर्नल, एक जर्नल, एक जर्नल सवाल नहीं पैदा हुआ।
बेटा मैं सिर्फ एक अर्ज करता हूँ, आपके सेंटीमेंट्स पहुंचे अली भाई की मौजूदगी में, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ हर तरह के डेलीगेट्स हैं, बाहर से भी, हम वैसे भी वी आर रनिंग शॉर्ट ऑफ टाइम। ये काइंडली स्लोगन्स हम करेंगे कॉन्फ्रेंस के इख्तितामी इजलास में, जो कि पॉलिटिकल एजेंडे के साथ होगा, और उसमें इंशाअल्लाह अज़ीज़ आपको वो कलर भी नज़र आएगा जो हमें आसमा जहांगीर दे के गई हैं। हम इस सेशन को भी कंक्लूजन की तरफ लेके जा रहे हैं। आपके जज्बात हमारे सामने। अली अहमद कुर्द साहब।
जर्नल जो 22 करोड़ आवाम के ऊपर, एक जर्नल 22 करोड़ आवाम के ऊपर हावी है, भारी है, या तो उस जर्नल को नीचे आना पड़ेगा या लोगों को ऊपर जाना पड़ेगा। तो ही सूरत है। अब बराबरी होगी, अब बराबरी होगी, बिल्कुल ऐसे बराबरी होगी। जर्नल और पाकिस्तान के एक शहरी में कोई फर्क नहीं होगा। ये जो हमारी जुडिशरी है, यही जर्नल जो 22 करोड़ आवाम के ऊपर हावी है, इसी ने हमारी जुडिशरी के 126 नंबर पे पहुंचा है। आज इस मुल्क में इंटेलेक्चुअल क्लास वो इस मुल्क से कब की खत्म हो चुकी है। इस मुल्क में अब कोई इंटेलेक्चुअल क्लास नहीं है, और इस मुल्क में कोई मिडिल क्लास दरमियान में नहीं रहा। तो आज इंटेलेक्चुअल क्लास नहीं है, तो जो ऊपर लोग बैठे हैं वो छोटे छोटे कद के लोग बैठे हुए।
मैं तमाम दोस्तों के जज्बात का ख्याल रखते हुए एक अर्ज करूंगा कि ये सियासी जलसा नहीं है। आप प्लीज सारे माहौल को देखते हुए अपने जज्बात का इजहार करें। अली अहमद कुर्द साहब हैं आखिरी सेशन में, प्लीज डेकोरम का ख्याल करें। आप प्लीज 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 जेंटलमैन, अली अहमद कुर्द साहब आगे, दाऊद बैठ जाओ। आप प्लीज ट्राई टू मेंटेन द डेकोरम ऑफ द कॉन्फ्रेंस प्लीज। थैंक यू वेरी मच। आए कुर्द साहब।
तो जनरल को नीचे आना पड़ेगा, बिल्कुल अब क्लियर कट बात है। अब वक्त आ गया है कि आंखों में आंखें डालकर बात करेंगे, और हम जरूरी है कि उन लोगों की आंखों में आंखें डाल के बात करेंगे जो हमें 70 साल से अपनी आंखें दिखा रहे हैं। ये मुल्क, इसमें आप जब मिडिल क्लास नहीं रही, जब इंटेलेक्चुअल क्लास नहीं रही, अब कोई लीडरशिप नहीं। जो भी आएगा वो और छोटे कद का आदमी आता जाएगा। ये मुल्क जिस हालत में पहुंचा है, मैं एक सियासी एक्टिविस्ट के तौर पर अपने दिन रात मैंने लगाए हैं इसमें, सड़कों पे लोगों के साथ कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर मैं जल्द से जुलूस में रहा हूं। मैं उस एक्सपीरियंस की बुनियाद पे कहता हूं, उठो, अपने जान में जान पैदा करो। ये मुल्क आपकी मुट्ठी से रेत के जर्रात की तरह गिरता खत्म हो रहा है। कोई मुल्क आपके लिए नहीं रहेगा। ये मुल्क, अब भी आपके पास वक्त है, अब भी आपके पास वक्त है। मुट्ठी में रेत के जर्रात को जिस तरह नहीं रोका जा सकता, इस तरह इन हालात में जो मुल्क जा रहा है, आप इसको बरकरार नहीं रख सकते। आपको किश्तियां जलानी पड़ेंगी, किश्तियां जलानी पड़ेंगी, और अपनी जिंदगी का जान की बाजी लगानी पड़ेगी। जान की बाजी लगाएंगे, जान की बाजी लगाएंगे तो ये मुल्क बचेगा, नहीं तो इस मुल्क के साथ बहुत 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 मजाक हो रहा है। 6-6 साल से 6-6, 7-7, 8-8 साल से बलूचिस्तान में लोगों को उठाकर एजेंसियां उठाकर ले गई हैं, कोई पता नहीं है। ये मजाक बंद करें, अब आंखों में आंखें डालकर बात करने का वक्त आया है। आपको लोगों को सोचने का, लोगों को ख्वाब देखने का मौका दें। ख्वाब देखेंगे तो ये मुल्क एक बहुत खूबसूरत मुल्क बनेगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
बहुत शुक्रिया जी। अली अहमद कुर्द साहब का एक अपना अंदाज़ है और उनका जो कर्ब है वो हमेशा हमारे साथ शेयर करते हैं। मैं एक मैनेजमेंट के बिहाफ पे अनाउंसमेंट ज़रूर देना चाहूँगा। आई हैव बीन टोल्ड बाय द मैनेजमेंट ऑफ आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन and the organizers of the conference that we respect freedom of expression and we believe in dialogue, but at the same time हम ये भी समझते हैं कि जो constitutional officers हैं और हमारे मोअज़्ज़ज़ मेहमान जहाँ पे बैठे हुए हैं, हर स्पीकर की एक अपनी राय है, वो किसी एक फ़र्द या इंस्टीट्यूशन की तरफ डायरेक्टेड नहीं है। इट इज़ हिज ओन ओपिनियन। तो बात को हम आगे ज़रूर बढ़ाते हुए, बार और बेंच का रिश्ता जो है वो शुरू से बड़ा जुड़ा हुआ है और मैं समझता हूँ इसी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हम आपस में शिकवे शिकायतें भी करते हैं। बार और बेंच अदालत से बाहर छोटे मोटे आर्गूमेंट में भी आती है, डायलॉग भी होता है, कुछ रंजिशें भी होती हैं, कुछ प्यार भी बढ़ते हैं और इसी बैलेंसिंग रवैये की वजह से मैं समझता हूँ कि दोनों इदारे जो हैं उनकी इंडिपेंडेंस जो है वो मेंटेन होती है। इस तकरीब को आगे बढ़ाते हुए मैं गुजारिश करूंगा इस तकरीब के को होस्ट प्रेसिडेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन ऑफ पाकिस्तान मोहतरमा आसमा जहांगीर के पुराने साथी जनाब मोहम्मद हसन भून साहब से।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। ऑनरेबल Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honourable Judges of Supreme Court, Honourable Chief Justice Islamabad High Court, Honourable Chief Justice Lahore High Court, Excellencies, Honourable Judges, members of the civil society, parliamentarians, बार लीडर्स, लेडीज़ एंड जेंटलमैन, मैं 2-4 लफ्ज़ उर्दू में आपसे बात करूंगा। ये कॉन्फ्रेंस आपको इल्म है कि मोहतरमा आसमा जहांगीर की उस विजन और उस आवाज़ की याद में है जिसको हमने हमेशा याद रखना है। तो तमाम हमारे यंगस्टर्स का जो जज्बा है वो काबिले सताइश और काबिले तकलीद है, लेकिन हर फंक्शन के अपने लवाज़मात होते हैं चूँकि और डायनेमिक्स होते हैं। चूँकि आज का फंक्शन कोई सियासी जलसा नहीं बल्कि वो तजावीज़ हैं जो हमारे अदारों के हवाले से या हमारे मुल्क के हवाले से या इंटरनेशनल वर्ल्ड के हवाले से आगे ले जाने की तजवीज़ है। इसलिए मैं ये अर्ज करूंगा कि यहां शेम का नारा बिल्कुल नहीं लगाना, इसलिए कि यहां हर मेहमान इंतहाई काबिले तकरीम और काबिले इज्जत है। हमने अपने बच्चों को ऐसे फंक्शंस की तरबियत देनी है कि जहां ये डायलॉग में हम एक दूसरे की बाहमी राय का एहतराम करते हुए आगे चल सकें। वक्त की शदीद किल्लत है, इसी बात के बाद मैं अपना पेपर पढ़ूंगा। तमाम हाजरीन की मौजूदगी में मैं ख़ास तौर पर जो सबसे पहली कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई थी, दैट वाज इनॉग्रेटेड बाय द देन ऑनरेबल चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ पाकिस्तान मियाँ साकिब निसार साहब, उनकी प्रेजेंस में बड़ा वेलकम करता हूँ। लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, it's an honor to be present here and an absolute pleasure to be addressing such a diverse audience, including the Honourable Judges of High Court, Supreme Court, parliamentarians, policy makers, journalists, researchers, gathered here from all corners of the world in the memory of Asma Jahangir today. I would like to extend warm welcome to everyone in attendance. This would have not been possible without the tremendous efforts of an extremely hard-working team. I think that this conference has come to an extremely critical and sensitive juncture of Pakistan's history. We are living in times where Asma's vision is more relevant and than ever before. The democratic system in the state of Pakistan is in turmoil, while freedom of media is facing bounds like never before. The judiciary is under immense pressure and the freedom of courts being questioned like never before. The state of human rights abuse across the region of Jammu and Kashmir, airing on national television every day, is constant reminder of the horrors that Asma warned us about. Accountability, civil freedoms, and trust in democratic institutions within the country or even the whole of South Asia, for that matter, has never been more fragile. We have politically unstable neighbors with democratic system either polarizing or faltering on one side and completely non-existent on the other. This has a natural destabilizing impact for the entire region, and it has therefore never been more critical to emphasize the need for complete faith and trust in democratic institutions than now. I don't think anything could be as strong as indicator of a well-performing democracy as the institutions of human rights in a country. Human rights, rightly identified as the core evaluative indicator of a democratic system, are also one of the most fragile. मैं वेलकम करता हूं जनाब जस्टिस उमर अता बंदियाल साहब, the senior puny honorable judge of Supreme Court. Human rights, rightly identified as the core evaluative indicator of a democratic system, are also one of the most fragile, easily manipulated, and initial points of attack when a democratic system in a country is derailed. Look anywhere in the world, the first evident indicator of a democratic system diminishing or being under threat is abuse of human rights in the country. This involves curtailing of civil rights such as free movement, right to protest, freedom of expression, and most importantly, right to free and fair trial. While it's true that democratic systems across the world are different owing to varying historical trajectories and cultural influences, democracy and human rights share a mutually inclusive relationship, as there can be no human rights without democracy and vice versa. In my opinion, the basic description of any democracy in the world involves a solidified guarantee of basic human rights being protected. Democracy is conditional in its nature. Calling the country's political system a democracy, I am afraid, does not make it a democracy. The protection and propagation of human rights, and by default, the strengthening of democracy needs legal protection. It needs deep and penetrating foundation. It needs presidential advancement, and lastly, effective and indiscriminative accountability. The only institution in the country capable on the delivering of the metrics of creation, propagation, advancement, and accountability, apart from the parliament, is the judiciary. The superiority of democracy to the other system of government lies in the principle of separation of power and corresponding checks and balancing, that they are arms of government. The legislative, the executive, and the judicial exercise over one another. Pakistan's experience with democracy is not a success story, but it is most certainly a resilient story. While all three of these pillars are equal important, I will stick to speaking about the judicial arm, since theme of the conference demands it. In my humble opinion, everywhere in the world, the dictators are the representatives of imperial forces use the religion as a tool to perpetuate their rule. In Pakistan, a dictator, namely Ziaul Haq, used the same practice and inserted Article 62 1F in the Constitution of Pakistan, whereby it was conditioned that parliamentarians should be Sadiq, Amin, righteous, etc. While taking advantage of the presence of all stakeholders, I would say to be a Sadiq, Amin, is a virtue of prophets. Whereas all the human beings are fallible, whether they are judges, parliamentarians, or any other representative of the society. So they cannot be measured or tested at the touchstone of such traits. So the provisions of Article 162, 1F, inserted in the Constitution of the Pakistan, in my humble view, is against and in conflict of the basic spirit of the Islam, and is liable to be struck down. Similarly, I would say the power used under Article 184(3) by the Honourable Supreme Court, there is no right of appeal, and the fate of parties is always sealed for all time to come, which is violative of the Article 10A of the Constitution. So, I have already made request to the Honourable Chief Justice, and I would request the Honourable Judges of the Supreme Court to amend the rules of Supreme Court accordingly to provide a right of appeal to the aggrieved parties. Let me say now, I think Pakistan has one of the most active judiciaries in the world. We have judges who are bold, brave, and undeterred. Where it comes to questioning decisions made by the government and the armed forces. But still we are unable to dispel the impression of pressures. There is no juncture in the history of Pakistani politics where government have not relied upon the courts for their judgments. Even in the dark, authoritative segments of Pakistan history, rulers have repeatedly tried to gain legitimacy through courts. The point of making this argument is not to highlight or delve into historical decisions, because that is a dark past of our judiciary, but to signify that even in the darkest political periods, Pakistani courts were perceived to be the only institution that had the power to alter the status quo and change the national narratives. Democratic or not, almost all Pakistani statesmen have relied on courts in Pakistan at some point in history. I think the best tribute to Asma could be a realization of the fact that history is the best used as a learning tool and not a determining map for the future. It takes just one person, one judge, one journalist, one politician to stand up and challenge democratic infringements. That one person is feared by everyone who at any time even think of challenging the democratic system is in the country. That person was Asma Jahangir. It will always be Asma. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan Boone, President, Supreme Court Bar Association. We are now moving towards the concluding portion of the inaugural session. I would now request Mr. Justice Atar Minallah, the Honourable Chief Justice Islamabad High Court, to please come on the podium and share his views. May I request PK that not कि आप ज़रा live streaming हटा दीजिएगा, जज साहब की ये request थी. बहुत शुक्रिया.
Honourable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honourable Judges of the Supreme Court, Honourable Chief Justice of the Lahore High Court, elected representatives of the bars, excellencies, members of the bar, members of the civil society, members of the media. It is a great pleasure and an honor to be at this prestigious annual event. It has become prestigious because it attracts not only members of the judiciary, but the member of the bar, the political leadership, and the civil society. This dialogue is very important. I had prepared because when I read the topic, it appeared to be a very academic topic. But after hearing Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurt, first of all, I'm grateful to him. It is very important. It is very important for us to know what the bar and what the people think about us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me assure Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurt that no judge who's independent can ever make an excuse that he can be pressurized or influenced. Any such excuse, I'm afraid, is a violation of the oath. And the oath that we take, we swear in the name of Allah. Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurt, what he said, and unfortunately, it reminded me of an incident, probably highlight the dilemma, not just of the judiciary, but and I was a lawyer, and I wasn't enrolled as a lawyer of the Supreme Court. I took up the newspaper in the morning, and it said that the judges will be administered oath under PCU. I was quite shocked. And went to the Supreme Court. There was an eerie silence there. I kept asking people where were the judges. And they took me to a foyer. And in the middle of the foyer was a gentleman by the name of Buddha Khan, who was the additional registrar. And I had a handwritten petition. From a corridor, I heard loud laughters, and then judges came towards me, and I was in the middle of the foyer. And they asked me, "Why are you there?" I said, "Your Lordships, I have a grievance. You have already taken an oath, and you cannot take another oath. It will be violation of the earlier oath." They were so excited they didn't listen to me, and they ran towards the cars. Mr. Buddha Khan came back and he asked me, "What have you done?" I said, "They were some other judges who weren't here." So they said, "They are in such and such chambers." Nobody stopped me. I went to that chamber. Now I take a pause. How many in this audience can tell me the names of those 5 honorable judges who had refused to take oath on the 26th of January 2000? Anyone who can raise the hand and say who those judges were? None in the audience. This is what is shocking. I went to the chamber of Justice Nasir Aslam Zahid, who is alive. And I sent in the petition The person came back and he said, they've asked me to inform you to give it in the office of the registrar. I requested for a hearing, and I was given an audience. And 5 most honorable judges, 2 of whom would have been the Chief Justices of Pakistan, Justice Wajiuddin Ahmed and late Justice Kamal Mansoor Alam. Justice Khalilur Rahman was also there, and Justice late Mamoon Qazi. They asked me, young man, what do you want? I said, your lordships, I have a grievance. Before the petition is heard, I want a restraining order. It was my right to have taken that petition. But 7 years after that, I'll again give it a pause. I'm sorry, Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd. You started this, so I thought I'll change my speech. When I came down, there was again an eerie silence. The authoritarian rule was at its peak. There was only 2 lawyers in the bar room when I came out, and I wouldn't like to name them. I sat in the car, went to my office. I thought the civil society will come out. I thought that there will be resistance. I request you to take up the newspapers of 27th of January 2000. There was usual business. Now I go back to 2007. There was a historic lawyers' movement. It wasn't a movement for the restoration of judges. It was a struggle which symbolizes the topic. The civil society and people of this country dreamt of a judiciary that would be independent, impartial, protect the human rights, and strengthen democracy. That was the historic movement led by the lawyers. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2007, Justice Wajiuddin Ahmed was with me in that movement, and he said probably history would have been different if we had entertained your petition. I go back to 1954. Soon after the independence was rooted in democracy. Soon after the independence, the first test of the judiciary came up before it. It was the Tamizuddin Khan case. And it came before the Sindh Chief Court. How many in the audience knows the names of those honorable judges who had rendered that first landmark judgment? How many? Can anyone raise the hands? It was, again, you see, nobody knows. Nobody knows, the civil society does not know. That was the first test, and the judiciary should be proud of that. The bench was led by the Chief Justice, Justice George Constantine, and the other honourable judges were Justice Bachel, Justice Bakhsh, and Justice Viliani. Thank you, Mr. Ali Ahmed Court. You have changed the theme of this conference. That honourable court rendered that landmark judgment. Had it not been deplorably reversed by the federal court, led by Justice Munir, the future of this country would have been very different. That is from where democracy was derailed. Democracy was destroyed. And I, as the Chief Justice, cannot blame anyone. And from there on, it was the Doso case, then the other case, Mohtarma Nusrat Bhutto's case, then Zafar Ali Shah case. All those judgments are part of history now. We can't erase them from the history. These judgments were responsible for making and enabling those that have been referred to by Mr. Ali Ahmed Court to exercise their power. What can be more regrettable for an institution that an elected Prime Minister, an honourable judge of that bench, conceded that he was hanged because there was pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ali Ahmed Court, yes, as a judicial organ of the state, we must not bury our head in the sand. We can't refuse to accept our mistakes. We have changed the course of history of this country. The authoritarian rules, half of the life of Pakistan's existence is based on authoritarian rules. Regressive governments have destroyed fundamental rights and suppressed freedoms. But this struggle cannot be taken up by the judiciary on its own. The other players are equally important. It reminds me of the Bill of Rights of the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. And in that, John Adams had identified the two most important rights: the right to have access to an independent court and free press. But when I say free press, it has to be an independent, free press and media, not controlled by proprietors having vested interests This is the advantage of speaking the truth, Ali Ahmed Kurd, that you have at least started the dialogue. Yes, we all are responsible. We all are responsible, but the buck stops at us, we the judicial organ. Every organ, whether it's the media, whether it's the civil society, whether it's the bars, every one of us have to look inwards. If there is no free media, free speech, there wouldn't be any independence of judiciary. They are interdependent. But the media has to be responsible. But I'm not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I can assure this gathering on behalf of the Islamabad High Court that we have the resolve not to repeat our mistakes, not to bury our heads in the sand. It is our duty and our responsibility that we earn the respect and confidence of the people who are the real stakeholders of this institution. I hope the others would follow suit. There are many other things that I could say, but again, thank you, Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd, for letting me speak the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justice Minallah, for sharing your heart with the audience and the honorable guest. Now, without wasting any further time, we are running short of time. May I request the honorable speakers that to take into consideration the time restraints. We were supposed to conclude this session by 1:30. I would now request the Honourable Chief Justice Lahore High Court, Mr. Justice Muhammad Amir Bhatti, to please come on the stage and share his views with the audience. Justice Amir Bhatti Sahib.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Justice, Supreme Court of Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmed, Honorable Judges of Supreme Court of Pakistan, former Chief Justice Mia Saqib Nisar, Honorable Chief Justice Islamabad High Court, Mr. Atar Minallah, my brothers, judges, Lahore High Court, President, Supreme Court Bar Association, Mr. S.N. Boone, Vice Chairman, Pakistan Bar Council, Mr. Khushdil Khan, eminent members of legal fraternity, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It gives me great pleasure and I feel honored to address this august gathering comprised of distinguished luminaries of the legal as well as other associate fields. Asma Jahangir was pioneer of human rights movement in Pakistan. She fought and was always found on the front line of 4 pro-democracy movements, student unions led protests, etc. I had the pleasure of meeting her several times over the course of my career and always found her to be a strong-willed and determined lady for which she deeply respected her. I deeply respected her. It is heartening to take this opportunity today to share my views on the topic, the role of judiciary in protecting human rights and strengthening democracy. It needs to be emphasized that such judicial conferences primarily serve three key purposes which are crucial to the proper administration of justice in the country. They provide an invaluable platform to lawyers and judges for the sharing of ideas across different aspects of the law. They promote communication and understanding between the bench and the bar, and indeed throughout the legal community in a comfortable and harmonious environment away from the adversarial norm of our courts, and finally allow generation of new ideas and approaches to tackle the myriad of legal issues that face not only our country today, but are also relevant to nations throughout the world. There is no gainsaying the fact that the judiciary plays a pivotal role in securing societal peace by providing a structured, institutionalized forum for the determination of discord and dispute and the redressal of civil and criminal wrongs and grievances. The Constitution of Pakistan, Republic of Pakistan, calls for the establishment of democratic state where ideas of social justice and rule of law regime supreme. The judiciary in this regard has the heavy responsibility of being the pillar of which the values of a country are founded upon and are upheld. It is tasked with being the sturdiest branch of the state, a guardian of the Constitution and a protector of people's fundamental rights and basic liberties. In order to be able to discharge this duty, it is vital that the judicial system be independent from any external influence or control in order to ensure that the principles laid down within our constitutional framework are treated as something more than mere ambitions. Safeguarding human rights and fundamental freedoms is an essential and integral part of all the democratic and progressive societies. Constitutional courts in Pakistan and the government of Pakistan attaches high priority to promotion and protection of human rights of all the citizens as granted by the Constitution, and in accordance with our religious authorities as well as national and international obligations. The Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan is a primarily legal source of protection of human rights, fundamental rights. The principles of policy lays on non-justiciable rights in the Constitution, which ensures full participation of women in national life, protection of minorities, promotion of social justice and eradication of the social evils, promotion of local self-government, promotion of social and economic well-being of the people, and the promotion of international peace. The laws of Pakistan take their base from the Constitution of Pakistan. Article 5 of the Constitution places an obligation of loyalty and obedience to the Constitution and law on all the citizens of Pakistan. Article 8 states that any law or any custom or usage having the force of law insofar as it is inconsistent with the rights conferred by the Constitution shall, to the extent of such inconsistency, be void. Further human rights covered under the Constitution of Pakistan include the right of individuals to be dealt with in accordance with law, etc. Right to life and liberty is contained in Article 9. Law inconsistent with or in derogation of fundamental rights are to be void. Dignity of man, freedom of speech, and right to profess religion are few of the sacred rights. Moreover, Article 25 is the most significant clause as it talks about the equality of citizens, stating all citizens are equal before law and are entitled to equal protection of law. Furthermore, Article 19A of the Constitution, right of information is a fundamental right. The right you have as a citizen to access information from your government and private bodies that receives public funds. Right to information is based on principle that information belongs to the people. It is considered important to empower citizens, ensure transparency in governance, and improve public services by facilitating public participation and oversight. Under Article 199(2), the High Court is vested the duty of protect fundamental rights of citizens, and the Supreme Court has extraordinary jurisdiction under Article 184, sub-Article 3, through which it takes up matters where fundamental rights are infringed. Pakistan Judiciary has a long and distinguished history of ensuring that fundamental freedoms of all the citizens are protected and has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the protection and enforcement of fundamental freedoms enshrined within our constitutional settlements, laws, and jurisprudence. I would now take this opportunity to express my gratitude for the Honourable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmed. His faithfulness to constitutionalism and rule of law has been a hallmark of his judgments, and his adherence to law. A judge of deep judicial insight, he has been part of benches deciding high-profile cases and has authored many landmark judgments. A few months ago, the Honourable Supreme Court ordered for the recovery of rupees 33 million from the accused involved in the burning of Hindu temple in KPK and allowed the Hindu community to rebuild their temple as they wanted. Moreover, His Lordship, while inaugurating the building of Pink Ribbon Hospital, the first ever dedicated breast cancer hospital in Pakistan, highlighted the constitutional right of women in Pakistan and said the women were not only a valuable part of the country, but a lifeline of the society. Likewise, August Supreme Court took up the matter of load shedding in Karachi and observed that it was incumbent upon the federal government to ensure that the citizens were not deprived of the facility of electricity, as it was a matter of right to life, right of dignity of man, privacy of home, right to trade and business, profession and occupation, and right to equality under the Constitution. Moreover, in another human rights case, it was opined that economic prosperity was a sine qua non for the implementation of all fundamental rights, the paramount right being that of life. The word justice and the term dispensation of justice might lead you to believe that it is the sole responsibility of the judiciary to dispense justice, which is wrong. Dispensation of justice has several limbs which require all three organs of the state to chip to their bit. Each of them has to perform their functions independently without interfering in the jurisdiction and domain of the other. Moreover, as per import of Article 37D of the Constitution, the state is to ensure inexpensive and expeditious justice. Dispensation of justice is in fact core principle of rule of law. The judiciary has important role in maintaining the rule of law, which is not an abstract consideration, rather it is living faith which derives its inspiration from constitutional character. The importance of administration justice is pivotal to the smooth functioning of the country. Justice ensures uniformity, impartiality, and collective wisdom, while its absence can lead to anarchy, inhuman behavior, and actions contrary to moral values. Therefore, the concept of fair trial and due process has always been the golden principle of administration of justice. Moreover, the superior courts have contributed significantly to the growth of democracy in Pakistan. This is evident from the several decisions of the courts reviewing legislative and executive actions that were contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. The courts have made radical pronouncement on some constitutional issues such as conduct of election, revenue allocation, division of powers, structuring of discretion, fundamental rights of political parties and local governments, which have gone a long way in strengthening the democracy in Pakistan. In Asad Ali case, PLD 2020-21, Supreme Court 770, the August Supreme Court declared Section 3 of the Punjab Local Government Act 2019 to be ultra vires the Constitution, and consequently held that local governments were existing in Punjab prior to promulgation of the said section stood restored and shall complete their term in accordance with law. It is apparent from the few references mentioned above that the courts have been alive to its constitutional responsibilities as far as the protection of democracy is concerned, even at the grassroots level. It would not be out of place to mention here that the courts have performed more than any other organ or person in protecting citizens' rights and ensuring that there is no battle of might, but each player plays in accordance to the rule of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, the judiciary is working day and night for the purpose of improving overall justice system. And consequently, I must say that a silent revolution is taking place in our justice sector. Having said this, I must also contend that the judicial system is far from perfect because of many systemic issues that hinder the dispensation of timely justice in Pakistan, ultimately leading to situations where some groups in our society find themselves at a greater disadvantage, like the minorities, women, and poor. However, we must not let this prevail. To this end, we need to find ways to enhance cooperation between the judiciary, the legal fraternity, and the other related institutions. I firmly believe that these steps will go a long way towards improving the justice delivery system. Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu once remarked, "I firmly believe in the rule of law as the foundation for all of our basic rights. It is indeed right to say rule of law is the cornerstone of all democratic societies, and to strengthen democracy is to create prosperity for our future generations. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to our concluding part. Before I invite the Honourable Chief Justice, the guest of honor of today's session, for his concluding remarks, I would request Mr. Justice Qazi Faiz Isa from Supreme Court of Pakistan to please join us on the podium and share his views.
Honourable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honourable Senior Puny Judge of Pakistan, Honourable Chief Justice of Lahore High Court, Honourable Chief Justice of the Islamabad High Court, Honourable Judges of the Supreme Court, Honourable Judges of the High Courts, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. We start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. This Quranic verse is also inscribed at the very beginning of our Constitution. And every judge, constitutional office holder, and all members of the armed forces recite it before they proceed to take the oath to uphold the Constitution. Every citizen of Pakistan and every person in Pakistan is required to abide by the Constitution. It's a very long topic, and I'm impressed with your resilience that after 3 hours you're still here. So I'm confident for the future of democracy. If brave people like you show such resilience in hearing old men like me. Thank you. The Constitution guarantees about 24 human rights. I should just mention, I had written a 16-page paper. I won't inflict it on you, but there are copies available for those who want to read it. It's referenced. And why did I write it? I wrote it for the fear of that lady. For the fear of that lady. आके तकरीर कर गए, कुछ पढ़ लेते जज साहब. So, okay, so I don't know if she'll acquit me or not. I'll do my best. I won't go through the entire fundamental rights. The topic is interesting, human rights and strengthening democracy. And each one of the fundamental rights, one can spend a day on talking about it. Now, I shall briefly mention a few fundamental rights which are perceived to be the most under attack in Pakistan. Freedom of the press and the related right to information, and the rights of women, including the right of girls to be educated. Her Excellency Kaminara wanted to see a lady judge in the Supreme Court. What she failed to mention is that a lady judge was appointed for the first time in Balochistan, who rose to the rank of Chief Justice of Balochistan. Asma Jahangir became the President of Pakistan, President of the Supreme Court Bar Association of Pakistan. There was some conference which she had arranged, and there was a large Indian contingent. I said, your nation has still not had a lady as the President of your Bar Association. Yes. Another distinction for this country is, and that is a distinction amongst 50 Muslim countries of the world, we had the first Muslim Prime Minister. Yes. Justice Athar Milana has said a number of things which I did, and he has complimented Kur Sahab, who we're also a bit scared of. And he mentioned judges who did not take oath. He forgot to mention the first of them. He was from Balochistan as well, Justice Dora Patel. It is a dismal situation. Unless you don't own up to the truth, there is no chance for redemption. The World Press Freedom Index evaluates 180 countries and ranks them according to the prevalence of press freedom. In 2017 and 2018, Pakistan stood at the very low 139th position of the Freedom Index. We've slipped down to the 145th position. This is unforgivable. Why do I say that? We were amongst the first countries of the world who signed up to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The first 48 signatories, Pakistan was there. Liaquat Ali Khan signed it. And what did this Universal Declaration of Human Rights say in its Article 19? Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. That was not all. This was an international document. Pakistan enacted what we refer to as the Objectives Resolution. And this too was done by the first Prime Minister of Pakistan in the year 1949 by the Constituent Assembly. And it has formed part of every constitution of Pakistan till today, and today too it is part of the preamble of the constitution, but its status has now been raised as it has now become a substantive part of the constitution since the year 1985. And from this I will read, freedom of thought and expression must be ensured. And another portion of this Objectives Resolution which we sometimes forget to mention is the role of the founder of this great nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And this objective resolution binds us all to be faithful to the declaration made by the founder of Pakistan, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, that Pakistan would be a democratic state based on Islamic principles of social justice. Democracy, you don't beg for democracy, it is your right to demand democracy. One of the greatest constitutional minds that the subcontinent produced was Jinnah. And as far back as the press, he was commenting about the Press Act of 1910. 1910, 111 years ago. And he called it a striking blow at the liberty of the press which we all prize. And I again quote the great leader, gagging the legitimate constitutional expression of the public opinion and criticism of the government by banning meetings and processions and other executive methods by which the police and the administration are used not only to gag the free expression of opinion and criticism, which are the elementary rights of the citizen, but have destroyed all semblance of civil liberties and have by various methods chloroformed the press. I will not pass judgment on today's press. You are better. An international organization will better do that. He stood before in the Imperial Legislative Council, of which he was a member, and spoke truth to a foreign occupying power. Do these words resonate today? That is your call. Are you going to keep millions and millions of people trodden under your feet for fear that they may demand more rights? Are you going to keep them? Are you going to keep them in ignorance and darkness forever and for all ages to come, because they may stand up against you and say that we have certain rights and you must give them to us? Is that the feeling of humanity? Is that the spirit of humanity? It is the elementary right of every man to say, if he is wrong, that he is wronged, and that he should be righted. That's our founder's words. And were these new novel words, or was he following an earlier and a much, much greater tradition? the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And what did he say? This is a well-established hadith, and I have referenced all points in my paper. There are 85 references. The best jihad is to speak truth to a tyrannical ruler. The best jihad, Jihad-e-Akbar. This is the greater one. Jihad-e-Asghar is the lesser one, which you take up arms for the sake of the Almighty, not for any other purpose. And this, the Prophet derives from the Holy Quran, which says, speak the truth. And it's not just one, there are a number of verses of the Holy Quran which says so, and these have been listed as well. There's a very famous incident. A man came to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I have many sins. I steal, I gamble, I drink, and I lie. But for your sake, I'll give up one of them. Stop lying. The fundamental right to information, also has its moorings in Islam. The Holy Quran in a number of verses prohibits the concealment of public matters which the people have the right to know, and consider such concealment to be satanic. There are many stories which you know better than me, where prophets, where Khulafai Rashidin were asked, how did you get this extra cloak or shirt? And they did not get angry, they answered. There are two important decisions of the courts of Pakistan regarding Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation and Pakistan Television Corporation. I will not go into the details of it. I'll just quote one portion from it. If the Prime Minister spoke as a party leader on Pakistan TV or BBC, then the opposition was entitled to equal coverage. And if this was not done, it would be clearly discriminatory and thus not permissible. This judgment stands till today. A free and robust press is the backbone of democracy, serving both as a conscience and as a mirror. History tells us that totalitarian regimes suppress the press and impose censorship. Now, the other fundamental rights, rights of women. We are doing poorly. I think Excellency Turner mentioned the Global Gender Gap Index, where we are at number 153 out of 156. Why has that happened? Women's participation and empowerment, the founder guaranteed in a select central working committee of the All India Muslim League, encompassing nearly the all of subcontinent. There was always a lady member, Begum Muhammad Ali. Fatima Jinnah was an educated woman, accompanied her brother everywhere where he went, and she stood in elections against the dictator of the day. The non-discriminatory equality principle is embedded in Islam. And I quote the Quran, "The most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the one who is the most righteous." One can be either a man or a woman. There is no distinction. There is no superiority. And another thought which we don't realize how the importance, the significance of women. The part thread by a woman has been incorporated as an obligatory ritual in Islam. As far as I'm aware, with my limited knowledge of other faiths, this is probably the only ritual in established religion which has been established by a woman. And that was the running of Bibi Hajira, may Allah be pleased with her, between the hills of Safa and Marwa, looking for water for her son, Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. So this is the status, and where have we come to? Where indeed we have come to. These are not isolated examples. The list goes on and on. Prophets Hazrat Khadija bint Khalid was a businesswoman, widowed, 40 years old, proposed to the Prophet. A young man of 25, 15 years age difference. Can we envisage this happening in today's society? She is referred to as Ummul Mu'mineen, mother of all Muslims. Does anyone emulate her example? Does anyone emulate the example of the Prophet in this regard? Or always the second wife is a younger woman? Then we have, and he did not marry during her lifetime again, and then we have the great example of Hazrat Abu Bakr's daughter, Aisha. May Allah be pleased with both of them, that we narrate hadiths, and she is the source of about 3,000 of them. Not only that, she participated in battle, she taught in the mosque, and these are well-established facts. It's not just a case that the Prophet's family were so privileged. The Hazrat Umar Farooq, may Allah be pleased with him, appointed Shifa bint Abdullah, a woman who was experienced in business matters, as market inspector in Medina. Now, imagine, go back in time. Then, that society. In our constitution, the state is required to provide free and compulsory education to all children of all ages from age 5 to age 16. But what is happening? Ill-tempered ferociousness is displayed to keep women and girls out of school and keep them illiterate and uneducated. The ignorant who target girls going to school and attack school audaciously justify their violent acts as being Islamic. The Holy Quran itself exposes their monstrous lies. The very first wahi, revelation from up high to the Prophet was one word, Iqra, fail amar, the command form of the word, read. Of the myriads of other things that the Almighty could have conveyed to his last prophet, he chose the word Iqra. And then he followed it by the word pen, which is in the 4th verse, and then by the word education or learning, which is in the 5th verse. So the first speech through Archangel Jibreel alayhi salam, or Gabriel, was read, write, education or learn. So these are the fundamentals of the faith. Now I move to the second part of the, I think that I won't do justice to the thing, and that is how have we judiciary strengthened democracy? I thank the organizers for their graciousness in not placing a question mark at the end. I think they insinuated it though. Pakistan may be the only country in the world whose judiciary has played a major role in determining the course of democracy. 24th October 1954, Ghulam Muhammad, Governor General, boots out, closes shop, closes democracy. Maulvi Tamizuddin Khan assails the act, which Chief Justice Islamabad High Court has mentioned. They go before the 5-member bench of the Sindh Chief Court, it was known as, which unanimously decided allowed the petition. And I just quote one line from it. The Constituent Assembly purported dissolution is a nullity in law, and that both it and the office of its president are still existent. I fail to see how the action of the respondents can possibly be defended on any ground whatsoever. How wrong could 5 judges be? And they were led by Justice Constantine. Because the federal court where the appeal was filed was presided over by Muhammad Munir. And they had other views. And this, if I was to not quote it, you won't believe it, but this is a reported judgment. It is in the textbooks. About the Constituent Assembly, he said, it lived in a fool's paradise if it was ever seized with the notion that it was a sovereign body in the state. Then who is? One doesn't know. I'm quite clear in my mind that we are not concerned with the consequences, however beneficial or disastrous they may be, and brazenly disregarded the consequences. Now, what hubris, what utter self-assured hubris. Then elections held, 1956 constitution comes on 23rd of March 1956. Major General Iskandar Mirza throws it out, throws out the assembly, throws out the elected people, throws out the elected governments. And then, sadly, the Supreme Court, hearing two criminal appeals, infamously known as the Doso case, criminal appeals, they go out and justify such unconstitutional act. And how do they do so? The Constitution was vanquished by the Supreme Court, relying on the theoretical musings of an Austrian writer. And I just quote from the judgment: a victorious revolution or a successful coup d'etat is an internationally recognized legal method of changing a constitution. These are judges who had sworn to uphold the Constitution, but they were mesmerized by the writings of Hans Kelsen and certified him to be a renowned modern jurist. Incidentally, Hans Kelsen had to leave Austria when another Austrian, Hitler, took over power. So he should have stood there and said, I stand by my words now. Then Muhammad Ayub Khan, the commander-in-chief, he did the same act. He drafted his own constitution in the year 1962. He did not abide by his own constitution, handed it over to another general, General Yahya Khan. And then comes the role of this lady, who was then a young woman, Asma Jilani. She challenged the detention of her father, Malik Ghulam Jilani, and the validity of the Defense of Pakistan rules under which he was incarcerated. And there was another petition as well by Zarina Gohar challenging Altaf Hussain Gohar, the editor-in-chief of Dawn's, his detention. And what does the Supreme Court now say? They overruled Doso's judgment and said, a perfectly good country was made into a laughing stock. A country which came into being with a written constitution providing for a parliamentary form of government with distribution of state power between the executive, legislature and the judiciary was soon converted into an autocracy and eventually degenerated into military dictatorship, and the people ceased to have any share in the exercise of state powers. These are words of the Supreme Court. Next elections, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto is elected as Prime Minister, and what remains of Pakistan, its western wing, becomes Pakistan, and the constitution, the present constitution, was adopted, or came into effect on 14th of August 1973. But soon we are back to square one. 5th of July 1977 comes, and General Ziaul Haq, the Chief of our Army Staff, seizes power. Again, the Supreme Court, and this Supreme Court headed by Chief Justice Anwarul Haq, quote, the declared objectives of the martial law are to create conditions suitable for the holding of free and fair elections. What irony. In terms of the 1973 Constitution, yet we know first it was 1 month, then 9 months, and then 11 years till the next elections came on non-party basis. Such a mockery was made of Islam, misuse of the teachings of Islam was because nowhere in the Quran, the Almighty does not even grant such pharaonic powers to His beloved, the prophets. And once we got rid, that this was the direct device. The indirect device was the Article 58(2)(b) of the Constitution, which is no longer there, which was first used by Ghulam Ishaq Khan because of a speech given by the then Prime Minister Mia Mohammad Nawaz Sharif on 17th of April 1993, and then the same power of sacking the government, but this time they were lucky as the Supreme Court, by a majority of 10-1, restored the National Assembly and the Cabinet. The next time it was used on 5th of November 1996 by Farooq Ahmad Khan Laghari in dissolving the first woman Prime Minister and her Cabinet and sent her home. The country was not so lucky. And politician Mahmood Khan Achakzai, he too belongs to Balochistan. And others challenged this. And the then Chief Justice Sajjad Ali Shah said this, I quote him, in fact, Article 58(2)(b) has shut the door on martial law forever. Could anyone have been so wrong? Because on 12th of October 1999, another general struck General Pervez Musharraf and seized power. And this was again validated by the Supreme Court by a voluminous judgment of running into 287 paragraphs by Irshad, the then Chief Justice Irshad Hassan Khan. And here, how did the Supreme Court endorse his dictatorial rule? It said, state necessity, and used a Latin maxim, which no one in Pakistan understood, so it sounds good, Salus Populi Suprema Lex, and had the audacity to say that this doctrine is recognized, quote, and these are quotes, recognized not only in Islam and other religions of the world, but also accepted by eminent international jurists. General Musharraf struck twice, again on 3rd of November 2007. I just should mention the earlier attacks and the later attacks were different. Ziaul Haq and then all later dictators realized that first of all, I will now use Excellency Stirner's love of cricket, that you must not only get an umpire of your choice, you must fix the field, you must permit ball tampering. What am I saying? First, judges take an oath of loyalty to me, the dictator of the day, and then hear the cases. So this is the new set that started by first compelling judges to take oath, and those who did not take went home. Justice Dorab Patel had set a great precedent, which sadly few followed. He manipulated a petition filed by Tikka Muhammad Iqbal, and which got endorsed in virtually 20 days. He incarcerated the then Chief Justice of Pakistan and 13 judges of the Supreme Court. A nationwide protest ensued, nationwide. That's where your responsibility comes in. Known as the lawyers' movement, but I think it was all of civil society. And we have one articulate member of that society on the bench, as a speaker. It's just a mere coincidence that he's from Balochistan. And judges were finally restored on 23rd of March 2009. Finally, and I hope this is the final nail in the coffin, a 14-member bench of the Supreme Court headed by Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry allowed the petition filed by the Sindh High Court Bar Association, uprooted the decision in Tikka Muhammad Khan, and all earlier decisions of the Supreme Court where they had validated unconstitutional dictatorial military rule. It was, Chaudhry Sahab wrote 200 paragraphs. Yes, I will not read them. I will just read additional note, I think, which sums it up beautifully, and that comprises of only 6 paragraphs. I'm only going to read one, and that was by Justice Jawad S. Khwaja. He writes, can constitutional legitimacy flow from the force of arms, or, as is more graphically put at times, from the barrel of a gun? And if reliance on coercive forces gaining power is legitimized or condoned, there can be no rational basis for decrying the assault on the writ of the state by any band of marauders, robbers, adventurers, and zealots of varying extremes in the political spectrum, who undoubtedly will be encouraged in adopting similar use of arms and violence to force their ideological creeds on the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan have consciously chosen the method for their own governance. The Constitution is a document which at the conscious level records in classical terms the social contract between the people and those who they choose to entrust with the governance of the state. Courts have nothing to do with it. And I should just mention the World Justice Rule of Law Index, which has been referred to. Kursab, here I disagree with you. We are not at 126 number, we are 130 number as per the report out of 139 countries, which is not good. Which is not a matter to clap. Which is not a matter to clap. It's a matter of reflection. Now, all this is very well. All this is very well. What do we do? What do we collectively do? What do we individually do? And I will again go back to the Constitution. The Constitution commences by stating that sovereignty over the entire universe belongs to Almighty Allah alone, and that authority to be exercised is by the people of Pakistan through their chosen representatives. The second recital refers to the will of the people of Pakistan, and it specifically denigrates oppression and tyranny. So we come to now reflect, or we should, as a nation, not just the judiciary, not just the lawyers, not just civil society, but every citizen of Pakistan should reflect. There must be, there are other countries of the world, there is truth commissions, but we have an older device, much older, a device which is found in the Holy Quran. And this is the concept of muhasaba. I'll come to that in a minute. We need to reflect, admit and accept our mistakes, set aside our arrogance and delusions, seek forgiveness and promise never to violate the Constitution again. Only then there is the possibility of being forgiven by the people. We are there because of the people. The people are not there because of us. Islam requires us to do something very similar in the concept of muhasaba. Muhasaba means introspections, self-scrutiny, self-evaluation, and self-examination, and leads to seek forgiveness, tawbah, which attracts divine mercy. Almighty Allah has prescribed mercy on himself. This is the Quran, Holy Quran says. Among the 99 names or attributes of God is At-Tawwab, the acceptor of repentance. A person who repents, does tawbah, and resolves not to repeat the same mistake again, frees himself from the web of delusion. Muhasaba redacts self-esteem, self-importance, pride, and arrogance. If we remain delusional and arrogant, do not reflect, do not admit our mistakes, and do not seek forgiveness for our trespasses, there is no possibility of redemption in this world before the people, and in that world before our Creator. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Justice Qazi Faiz Issa, for your enlightening address paper. जज साहब से मैं ये भी दरख्वास्त करूँगा कि अगर आप क्योंकि ये काम करते हैं जजमेंट्स में, इसका उर्दू तर्जुमा अगर आप हमें फ़राहम करें आज के इस पेपर का, तो हम उसे जो आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन के वेबसाइट पे लगाएंगे. आपने पूरी हिस्ट्री का अहाता किया. Before I move forward, I've been requested by the management to extend our sincerest thanks to Supreme Court Bar Association office bearers, Pakistan Bar Council members, Wasim Mumtaz Saab, Khawar Ikram Saab यहाँ पे हैं, Hafizur Rahman Saab, Kalbe Hassan Saab, हमारे साथ ताहिर नसरुल्लाह साहब हैं, पीर मसूद हैं, फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन, कुछ इधर बैठे हैं, कुछ सामने अली ज़फ़र साहब हैं, कामरान मुर्तज़ा साहब हैं, सैयद अमजद शाह साहब का मैंने पहले जिक्र किया, द ऑफिस बेयरर्स ऑफ पंजाब बार काउंसिल, वाइस चेयरमैन मिस्टर फरहान शहजाद एंड हाजी अफसल, द चेयरमैन एग्जीक्यूटिव कमेटी, फॉर देयर सपोर्ट इन होल्डिंग दिस सेशन। आप सब ने हमें पूरी गाइडेंस फराहम की और जो लॉजिस्टिक सपोर्ट थी उसके साथ साथ। एंड आई वुड ऑल्सो रिक्वेस्ट के जो हमारे यंग स्टार्स हैं, जो वॉल्टियर्स हैं, और आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन की तमाम टीम, दे डिज़र्व अ बिग अपलॉज फॉर ऑर्गेनाइजिंग दिस इवेंट। नाउ लेडीज एंड जेंटलमैन, it's time to conclude this session. May I request the chief guest, the chief of ceremony, Chief Justice Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmed, to please come on the podium. मैं एक दफ़ा फिर दोस्तों से ये गुजारिश करूँगा, मैं अपने नौजवान साथियों से ये गुजारिश करूँगा कि आप प्लीज़ डोंट इसको एक आपने जैसे सदर सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार ने कहा, मैं मैनेजमेंट की तरफ से मैं एक बार फिर आपसे ये रिक्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ, और मैं आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट मुनीज़े सलमान को कि आप जाएं, उनके दरमियान ठहरे। ये कॉन्फ्रेंस का क्लोजिंग नहीं है, ये ओपनिंग सेशन है, आपको सियासी सेशन भी मिलेगा इसमें। वी आर ग्रेटफुल टू द ऑनरेबल मेंबर्स ऑफ द बेंच कि उन्होंने आज हमारी रिक्वेस्ट पे तशरीफ़ लाए और ग्रेस किया इस फंक्शन को। मैं आपके और चीफ जस्टिस गुलजार साहब के दरमियान हाइल नहीं रहना चाहता। चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ पाकिस्तान मिस्टर जस्टिस गुलजार अहमद।
बहुत शुक्रिया। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम। जनाब साकिब निसार साहब, फॉर्मर चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ पाकिस्तान, मेरे भाई जजेस सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ पाकिस्तान, हाई कोर्ट के जज साहबान, मेंबर्स ऑफ द बार, डिस्टिंग्विश्ड एक्सेलेंसीज फ्रॉम द एम्बेसीज एंड यूरोपियन Parliament and so also United Nations. थोड़ा शुरू करने का मामला बदल गया है बात को। अली उम्मद साहब ने कुछ बातें कही हैं जिसके बारे में जिक्र करना बहुत ज़रूरी है। लोगों को किसी किस्म का गलतफहमी का शिकार नहीं होना चाहिए, और इदारा अदलिया के इदारे का हेड होने की हैसियत से ये मुझ पे लाजिम है कि मैं उन बातों का किसी हद तक जवाब दूं जो यहाँ तक बन सकता है। सबसे पहली बात यह है कि जो अली अहमद कुर साहब ने मेरी अदालत के बारे में अगर कोई बात कही है तो मैं उसको बिल्कुल उस बात से मैं एग्री नहीं करूँगा। मैं अपनी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के बारे में अगर कहूँ तो मेरे सारे जजेस सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑफ पाकिस्तान के नहायत तनदेही के साथ, एक्स्ट्रा आवर्स लगा के मेहनत के साथ काम कर रहे हैं और आवाम को इंसाफ, उनके बुनियादी हुकूक, कानून की अमलदारी, आइन की अमलदारी, इंसाफ की बुलंदी और एक डेमोक्रेटिक कंट्री की प्रॉस्पेरिटी के लिए मुस्तकिल काम कर रहे हैं और तनदेही के साथ काम कर रहे हैं। इसी तरह से मेरे हाई कोर्ट के जजेस, चाहे वो इस्लामाबाद हाई कोर्ट के हों, चाहे वो पेशावर हाई कोर्ट के हों, चाहे वो लाहौर हाई कोर्ट के हों, चाहे वो बलूचिस्तान के हों, चाहे वो सिंध के हों, सब जजेस मेरे अदालत के तनदेही के साथ काम कर रहे हैं। मेरी लोअर जुडिशरी भी बहुत मेहनत के साथ, लगन के साथ लोगों को इंसाफ फराहम कर रही है। उनके जो मुकदमे हैं उनको सुनते हैं, उसके फैसले कानून के मुताबिक देते हैं। अगर वो किसी के मुकदमे में किसी को अगर कोई एतराज़ होता है तो उसका कानूनी हक होता है कि वो उसको चैलेंज करे, और बड़ी अदालत में चैलेंज करके उसको अपने कानून की पैरवी करके और उसको फैसले को तब्दील कराना चाहे तो तब्दील भी हो सकते हैं। तो एक जनरल स्टेटमेंट दे के कि अदालत हमारी यहाँ पे आज़ाद नहीं है, ये तासुर देना कि किसी के हम दबाव में काम कर रहे हैं, किसी इदारों के दबाव में काम कर रहे हैं, कम से कम मुझे कोई ऐसी इंसिडेंस का कोई याद नहीं पड़ती। मैंने किसी दबाव का नहीं लिया किसी इदारे का, ना मैंने कभी किसी इदारे की बात सुनी। मेरे को कोई नहीं बताता कि मैं अपना फैसला कैसे लिखूं, मेरे को कोई गाइड नहीं करता कि मैं अपना फैसला कैसे लिखूं, और मैंने कभी ऐसा कोई फैसला नहीं किया अपने सामने जो मुकदमे मेरे सामने आए जो मैंने किसी के कहने पे की हूं, ना किसी की जुर्रत हुई मेरे को कुछ कहने की आज तक। मैं ये सामने आपके कहना चाहता हूं, किसी ने मेरे काम में इंटरफियर नहीं किया। मैंने जो अपने फैसले दिए अपने कॉन्शियस के मुताबिक, अपनी समझ के मुताबिक, आइन को समझ के मुताबिक, कानून को समझ के मुताबिक फैसले दिए हैं। मैंने किसी के डिक्टेशन ना तो मैंने आज तक सुनी, ना देखी, ना समझी, ना कोई मैंने ऐसा असरात लिए अपने ऊपर। और मैं समझता हूं यही किरदार मेरे बाकी सारे जजेस का है। मेरी अदालत लोगों को इंसाफ देती है। अली अहमद कुर्द साहब, आप अदालतों में आए, देखें क्या हो रहा है। आप अदालतों के फैसले पढ़ें, आप देखें क्या हो रहा है। रोज मेरी कोर्ट के जजमेंट से लोगों जजेस मेरे लिखते हैं, किताबों में पब्लिश होती हैं, उनको पढ़ें और देखें किस कदर आज़ादी के साथ हमारी अदालत काम कर रही है और कानून की पैरवी कर रही है, आइन की अमल दरामद कर रही है। ऐसे जनरलाइज स्टेटमेंट देके विदाउट कोटिंग एनी इंस्टेंस, और अगर कोई इंस्टेंस है, कोई गलती का इंस्टेंस है, तो वो इंस्टेंस को आके सही कराया जाता है। अदालतों के फैसले एक एवोल्यूशनरी प्रोसेस है। हर दुनिया के मुल्क की अदालत के साथ यही एवोल्यूशनरी प्रोसेस चले हैं। कहीं गलत फैसले आते हैं, कहीं सही फैसले आते हैं। ये गलत फैसले और सही फैसले ये भी लोगों की अपनी 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 ओपिनियंस होते हैं। जरूरी नहीं है कि एक ओपिनियन से दूसरा ओपिनियन माने उस बात को। कुछ लोग कहते हैं ये सही फैसले हैं, कुछ लोग कहते हैं ये गलत फैसले हैं। हर एक का अपना अपना ओपिनियन है, हर एक को अपनी राय का इख्तियार है। सबकी राय का इख्तियार का रिस्पेक्ट किया जाता है। यही खूबसूरती है हमारे कानून की, यही खूबसूरती है हमारे अदालती निज़ाम की, यही डेमोक्रेटिक प्रोसेस की एक खूबसूरती है। और इस पर हम अमल दरामद करते हैं। कोई हमें रोके, आज तक किसी की हिम्मत नहीं हो हमें रोकने की। हमारी अदालत जो फैसला करना चाहती है फ्री है करने के लिए, और करती है। हर एक का मुहासबा करती है जिसका मुकदमा सामने आता है। बता दे किसकी डिक्टेशन के ऊपर कौन सा फैसला हुआ आज तक। ऐसा नहीं है। गलतफहमियां पैदा नहीं करें लोगों के अंदर। मैं अपने इदारे के बारे में बात करता हूं। लोगों को गलत बातें नहीं बताएं, इंतशार नहीं फैलाएं, इदारों के ऊपर से भरोसा नहीं उठवाएं लोगों का। यह काम नहीं है। मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं मेरे भाइयों बहनों और मेरे बच्चों, ये मुल्क पाकिस्तान, ये हमारे लिए कायम और दायम है और कायम और दायम रहेगा। और इसमें कानून की हुक्मरानी है, इंसानों की हुक्मरानी नहीं है। और हमारी अदालत इंशाअल्लाह जिस तरह से हम काम कर रहे हैं और करते रहेंगे, इस मुल्क के अंदर कानून की, आइन की और हर तरह से डेमोक्रेसी की फेवर करते रहेंगे, उसी का प्रचार करते रहेंगे, उसी को नाफिज करते रहेंगे। किसी अनडेमोक्रेटिक सेटअप को हम एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेंगे, हम छोड़ देंगे। हमने पहले भी छोड़ा है। मेरे ख्याल में इतनी बात काफी है आज के लिए। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। चीफ जस्टिस गुलजार अहमद ने भी आज दिल की बातें की। मैं एक बार फिर आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन, पाकिस्तान बार काउंसिल, सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन और AGHS की तरफ से आप सब अहबाब का शुक्रगुजार हूँ, मोअज़्ज़ज़ मेहमानान गिरामी का, डेलीगेट्स का, पार्टिसिपेंट्स का, फॉर बेयरिंग विद अस फॉर सच अ लॉन्ग टाइम। थैंक यू सो मच। वी आर गोइंग फॉर अ लंच ब्रेक और उसके बाद हमारे जो रूटीन के सेशंस हैं ये शुरू हो जाएंगे। सब दोस्तों से गुजारिश है कि बाहर लॉन में खाने का एहतमाम है, आप तशरीफ़ ले जाइए। और दोबारा आपके पास प्रोग्राम आया हुआ है, उस प्रोग्राम के मुताबिक जो हमारे आज के डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स के ऊपर सेशंस हो रहे हैं, प्लीज़ मेक श्योर कि आप अपनी चॉइस के सेशन में ज़रूर जाएं। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, बहुत शुक्रिया। एक कॉन्फ्रेंस बैग में एक लैपटॉप गलती से शायद बैग एक्सचेंज हो गया है किसी के साथ या उसमें निकला है, इस एरिया में था, उसमें कॉन्फ्रेंस का बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट मटेरियल है उस लैपटॉप में। तो गुजारिश करेंगे ज़रा अपना इर्द गिर्द देख लें, अगर किसी साहब को मिले तो वो ये मैनेजमेंट डेस्क है उस पर प्लीज़ ज़रूर पहुँचा दें। बहुत शुक्रिया।